Hey guys! Tonight we're diving into something that'll either put you to sleep or keep you staring at the ceiling until dawn. The mysterious solar flash timeline and how it supposedly connects to your pineal gland's ancient awakening. You're lying there in the dark, feeling that familiar tingle behind your third eye, wondering if those strange dreams about blinding light and cosmic shifts are just your brain's way of processing too much Netflix, or if something deeper is stirring in the collective unconscious of humanity. Picture this. You're standing in an ancient observatory, stone circles humming with electromagnetic energy, while civilizations across time all point to the same cosmic event, a solar flash so powerful it rewrites the very fabric of reality. You probably won't survive this journey with your current worldview intact. But that's exactly why we're here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where in the world you're tuning in from as we explore these rabbit holes together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself transported back to 3114 BCE, standing among the Maya as they carve the final calculations into their long count calendar. The humid jungle air clings to your skin as you watch these master astronomers, who somehow knew the exact length of a solar year to within minutes, point to a date that would later send conspiracy theorists into overdrive: December 21st, 2012. But here's the thing they probably didn't teach you in school. The Maya never actually predicted the world would end on that date. Instead, they marked it as the completion of a 5,125-year cycle, what they called a Great Age, the mainstream historical fact. The Maya long count calendar is one of the most sophisticated astronomical systems ever created, accurately tracking celestial cycles that modern science only confirmed in the 20th century. These weren't primitive people staring at the sky and making wild guesses. They were mathematical geniuses who could predict eclipses centuries in advance. But here's where it gets quirky. The Maya also believed in something called Hunabku, the galactic center, which they described as a cosmic consciousness that periodically sends out pulses of evolutionary energy. Sound familiar? Modern astrophysicists have discovered that the supermassive black hole at our galaxy's center does indeed emit periodic bursts of radiation, though they're usually too weak to affect Earth directly. You shift through time now, your consciousness drifting like smoke through the corridors of history. The ancient Egyptians whisper secrets about the Zep Tepi, the first time, when the gods walked among humans and the pineal gland was fully activated. You can almost feel the sand beneath your feet as you stand before the Great Pyramid, its internal chambers aligned not just with stars, but with specific electromagnetic frequencies that seem to resonate with something deep in your skull. Historians still argue whether the pyramid's internal acoustics were intentionally designed to induce altered states of consciousness. But anyone who's meditated in the king's chamber will tell you there's something undeniably strange about the way sound behaves in that space. It's as if the ancient architects understood something about human neurology that we're only beginning to rediscover. The pineal gland, that tiny pine cone-shaped organ nestled deep in your brain, has been called everything from the seat of the soul to biological Wi-Fi. René Descartes famously declared at the point where the soul meets the body, though he probably never imagined that modern science would discover it's literally a photosensitive organelle brain's own personal light detector, producing DMT and regulating your circadian rhythms based on solar cycles, you drift forward through time, landing softly in the libraries of ancient Alexandria, where Hermetic texts speak of the solar logos, a cosmic intelligence that communicates through light itself. The Gnostics whispered about the photostephanos, the crown of light that would one day illuminate humanity's consciousness. These weren't just pretty metaphors. They were describing what modern researchers are calling solar-induced consciousness evolution. Here's where the rabbit hole gets deeper. In 1859, something called the Carrington Event occurred, the most powerful geomagnetic storm in recorded history, caused by a massive solar flare. Telegraph lines sparked and caught fire. The aurora borealis appeared as far south as the Caribbean, and some telegraph operators discovered they could continue working even after disconnecting their power sources, using only the induced electromagnetic energy from the storm itself. But here's the quirky part that rarely makes it into textbooks. Hospitals reported unusual numbers of patients experiencing vivid dreams, out-of-body experiences, and what we might now call mystical experiences during the days following the event. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe our ancestors were onto something. When they connected solar activity with consciousness, you feel yourself sinking deeper into the narrative now. Your breathing slowing as we explore the indigenous prophecies that span continents and cultures. The Hopi speak of the great purification, a time when the sun will dance in the sky and humanity will face a choice between spiritual evolution and destruction. The Hindu texts describe the end of Kali Yuga and the dawn of Satya Yuga, marked by a divine light that transforms human consciousness. Even the Christians got in on the action. Revelation 16-8 mentions the sun being given power to scorch people with fire, while 2 Peter 3:10 describes the heavens passing away with a great noise and the elements melting with fervent heat. Sounds suspiciously like a solar event, doesn't it? The Aboriginal Australians have Dreamtime stories about the rainbow serpent awakening and sending waves of energy across the earth, while the Norse spoke of Ragnarok being preceded by a winter of winters, followed by a new sun rising in the sky. It's almost as if every culture on Earth received the same cosmic memo about a future solar event that would fundamentally alter human experience. You're probably starting to notice a pattern. Here and your eyelids are getting heavier as we piece together this cosmic puzzle. The ancient knowledge keepers weren't just stargazers, they were consciousness researchers, mapping the relationship between solar cycles and human awareness with a precision that would make modern neuroscientists jealous. The pineal gland, your brain's mysterious third eye, contains magnetite crystals, same mineral that allows birds to navigate using Earth's magnetic field. When solar activity increases, these crystals respond, potentially triggering the production of DMT and other consciousness-altering compounds. It's like having a cosmic radio receiver built right into your skull, constantly tuning into the universe's electromagnetic symphony. As you drift deeper into this historical tapestry, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline isn't just about some future cosmic event, it's about remembering what we've always known, buried deep in our collective DNA, waiting for the right solar key to unlock it. The ancients weren't predicting the future, they were remembering the past. When humanity's pineal glands were fully online and we lived in direct communion with cosmic consciousness. But that's just the beginning of tonight's journey. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to possibilities beyond the mundane, we're about to explore how modern science is finally catching up to ancient wisdom, and why your pineal gland might be preparing for the cosmic alarm clock that's been set for millennia. You find yourself drifting through the corridors of the Vatican's secret archives, where dusty manuscripts hide references to Lux Solaris, the solar light that early Christian mystics believed would herald humanity's transformation. The musty smell of ancient parchment fills your nostrils as you discover that Pope Leo XIII's famous vision in 1884 wasn't just about Satan being given power over the world for a century, but about a coming illumination that would restore divine consciousness to mankind. The mainstream historical fact here is that solar observation has been central to religious practice for millennia. Every major cathedral in Europe was built with precise solar alignments, their rose windows designed to capture and focus sunlight at specific times of year. The builders weren't just creating pretty architecture, they were constructing consciousness light machines. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you chuckle. Medieval monks were essentially the world's first solar researchers, meticulously recording sunspot activity and correlating it with everything from crop yields to the frequency of mystical visions among their brothers. They noticed that during periods of high solar activity, more monks reported divine encounters, prophetic dreams, and what they delicately termed celestial communications. You shift now to 17th century England, where Sir Isaac Newton spent more time studying alchemy and biblical prophecy than he did on physics. His unpublished manuscripts, hidden for centuries because they were considered too heretical, reveal his obsession with calculating the exact date of what he called the renovation of the world by fire. Newton believed that solar activity was directly connected to divine intervention in human affairs, and his calculations pointed to a period remarkably close to our current era. Historians still argue whether Newton's alchemical pursuits were legitimate science or mystical delusion, but recent discoveries suggest he was onto something profound about the relationship between solar radiation and consciousness transformation. As you float through time like a sleepy ghost, you land in the 1930s, where a Russian scientist named Alexander Chizevsky was mapping what he called heliobiology, the study of how solar cycles affect human behavior. His research, largely suppressed during the Soviet era, showed correlations between solar maximums and everything from revolution and war to artistic renaissance and spiritual awakening. Chizevsky discovered that major historical events, fall of empires, the rise of new religions, periods of mass enlightenment, all clustered around periods of intense solar activity. It's as if the sun was literally broadcasting wake-up calls to human consciousness, and only some people were tuned in to receive them. You're sinking deeper into your pillow now, your mind absorbing these connections like a sponge soaking up cosmic truth. The pineal gland, that little pine cone in your head, is essentially a biological solar panel, converting light information into neurochemical signals that regulate everything from your sleep cycles to your capacity for transcendent experience. Modern research has revealed that the pineal gland doesn't just produce melatonin, it's also the primary site of DMT production in the human brain. DMT, often called the spirit molecule, is released naturally during birth, death, and deep meditation. But here's where it gets interesting. Solar radiation can trigger increased DMT production, essentially turning your brain into a cosmic consciousness receiver during periods of high solar activity. You drift now to the Mayan city of Chichén Itzá, where the famous serpent shadow appears on the pyramid steps during the spring equinox. But what most tourists don't realize is that the entire complex was designed as a massive solar calendar and consciousness activation device. The acoustic properties of the pyramid create specific sound frequencies when you clap at the bass frequencies that match the resonant frequency of the human pineal gland. The Maya weren't just tracking time, they were mapping consciousness evolution. Their calendar system predicted not just astronomical events, but periods when human awareness would be most susceptible to cosmic influence. The 2012 date that caused so much hysteria, it wasn't the end of the world, it was the beginning of what they called the Age of Itzá, when the solar serpent would awaken humanity's dormant potential. Here's a quirky historical tidbit that'll make you smile. The ancient Egyptians used to prescribe sun gazing as a medical treatment, believing that direct solar exposure to the eyes could cure everything from depression to spiritual blindness. Modern science has discovered they weren't entirely controlled. Exposure to specific wavelengths of sunlight can indeed stimulate pineal gland function and improve mood regulation. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness creeping in as we explore how the ancients understood something we're only beginning to remember. The Egyptian pharaohs wore the uraeus, the serpent crown, not just as a symbol of power, but as a representation of the awakened pineal gland, the royal road to cosmic consciousness. As you sink deeper into this historical reverie, you begin to understand that every ancient mystery school, from the Eleusinian mysteries to the Mithraic cults, was essentially a pineal gland activation program. The initiates weren't just learning secret knowledge, they were learning how to tune their biological receivers to cosmic frequencies. The Gnostics called it Forte Stephanos, the crown of light. The Hindus called it Sahasrara, the thousand-petaled lotus. The Buddhists called it Buddha nature, the inherent potential for awakening. Different names, same phenomenon. The activation of humanity's cosmic consciousness interface through solar-induced pineal gland stimulation. You drift forward to the Renaissance, where figures like Giordano Bruno were burned at the stake for suggesting that the sun was a conscious entity broadcasting intelligence throughout the solar system. Bruno's heretical idea that the sun is the mind of the world is starting to look less crazy when you consider modern discoveries about the sun's electromagnetic influence on planetary consciousness. The historical record shows that periods of high solar activity consistently correlate with leaps in human creativity, spiritual awakening, and technological advancement. The Renaissance itself occurred during a period of intense solar activity, as did the Enlightenment, the Romantic movement, and the consciousness revolution of the 1960 South. Historians still argue whether these correlations are meaningful or merely coincidental, but the pattern is undeniable. When the sun gets active, human consciousness gets activated. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these cosmic connections, you begin to sense that we're approaching another such period solar maximum that could trigger the next great leap in human evolution. Your pineal gland, that ancient cosmic antenna, is already beginning to stir, preparing for the solar flash that mystics and scientists alike suggest is coming. But remember that crocodile dung sunscreen from earlier? Well, it turns out the ancient Egyptians were onto something there too. They understood that consciousness evolution requires both protection from harmful solar radiation and exposure to beneficial frequencies. It's all about finding the right balance, the sweet spot where solar energy enhances rather than overwhelms human awareness. You find yourself standing in the laboratory of Nikola Tesla in 1899, watching the mad genius conduct his Colorado Springs experiments with wireless energy transmission. The air crackles with electricity as Tesla discovers that the Earth itself is a massive electrical circuit, resonating at approximately 7.83 Hz of frequency that modern science now calls the Schumann resonance, and which happens to match the alpha brainwave state, associated with deep meditation and pineal gland activation. Tesla's notebooks, filled with cryptic diagrams and calculations, reveal his obsession with what he called cosmic energy, the idea that consciousness itself could be transmitted through electromagnetic waves. He believed that the human nervous system was essentially a biological radio receiver, capable of tuning in to what he termed the cosmic symphony. The mainstream historical fact is that Tesla's wireless energy experiments were real and documented, though most of his more esoteric research was classified or destroyed after his death. What remains suggests he was exploring the relationship between electromagnetic fields and human consciousness decades before anyone else even considered the possibility. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you grin. Tesla claimed he could induce specific mental states in people by exposing them to carefully calibrated electromagnetic frequencies. His Colorado Springs laboratory was essentially the world's first consciousness hacking facility, where he experimented with using artificial electromagnetic fields to stimulate what he called the electrical nature of human thought. You drift now through the smoky laboratories of early 20th century Europe, where scientists like Georges Lakhovsky were developing what they called radiobiology, the study of how electromagnetic radiation affects living organisms. Lakhovsky's multiple wave oscillator was designed to restore cellular health by exposing patients to a broad spectrum of electromagnetic frequencies. But users reported an unexpected side effect: enhanced intuition, vivid dreams, and what can only be described as expanded awareness. The device was quietly suppressed by medical authorities, but not before Lakhovsky documented hundreds of cases where electromagnetic therapy seemed to activate dormant aspects of human consciousness. His research suggested that the human body, particularly the nervous system, was designed to interact with cosmic electromagnetic fields in ways that mainstream science was only beginning to understand. Historians still argue whether these early electromagnetic consciousness researchers were legitimate scientists or elaborate charlatans, but their work laid the foundation for modern understanding of how solar radiation affects human neurology. As you sink deeper into your comfortable position, your mind absorbing these scientific breadcrumbs like a sleepy detective solving a cosmic mystery, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline isn't just ancient prophecy, it's cutting-edge science wrapped in mystical language. Your pineal gland, that mysterious little organ that Descartes called the seat of the soul, is now known to contain magnetite crystals, the same mineral that allows migratory birds to navigate using Earth's magnetic field. When solar activity increases, these crystals respond to changes in the planet's electromagnetic environment, potentially triggering cascades of neurochemical activity that could fundamentally alter consciousness. You float forward to the 1960s, where a maverick scientist named Robert Becker was studying what he called the body electric, the idea that human beings are essentially bioelectrical organisms whose health and consciousness depend on proper electromagnetic function. Becker's research, conducted while he was working for the US military, revealed that the human nervous system is exquisitely sensitive to electromagnetic fields, particularly those in the extremely low frequency range that matches natural Earth rhythms. But here's where it gets really interesting. Becker discovered that certain electromagnetic frequencies could induce what he carefully termed altered states of consciousness in laboratory subjects. These weren't just random mental changes, they were specific, reproducible alterations in awareness that seemed to unlock dormant cognitive abilities. His work was quietly classified, but declassified documents now reveal that government researchers were deeply interested in the possibility of using electromagnetic fields to enhance human performance, induce telepathic communication, and access what they euphemistically called non-local information sources. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness settling in as we explore how modern science is finally catching up to what ancient mystics always knew. Consciousness isn't produced by the brain, it's received by it, like a radio tuning into cosmic broadcasts. The pineal gland, with its photosensitive cells and magnetite crystals, appears to be the primary receiver for these cosmic transmissions during periods of high solar activity. The increased electromagnetic radiation reaching Earth could theoretically activate dormant circuits in the pineal gland, triggering the production of DMT and other consciousness-altering compounds. This isn't just speculation anymore. Recent research has shown that people living in areas with higher natural electromagnetic activity near fault lines, mineral deposits, or areas of geological instability report significantly higher rates of mystical experiences, prophetic dreams, and psychic phenomena. It's as if the Earth itself is broadcasting consciousness-expanding signals, and some locations are better receivers than others. You drift now to the work of Dr. Michael Persinger, the controversial neuroscientist who developed the God Helmet, a device that uses weak electromagnetic fields to stimulate the temporal lobes and induce mystical experiences in laboratory subjects. Persinger's research suggests that what we call spiritual or transcendent experiences are actually the result of specific patterns of electromagnetic activity in the brain, particularly in areas associated with the pineal gland and temporal lobe complex. Here's a quirky historical footnote. Persinger discovered that many famous religious and mystical experiences throughout history occurred during periods of high geomagnetic activity. Joan of Arc's visions, Paul's road to Damascus experience, even Buddha's enlightenment under the Bodhi tree correlate with documented periods of intense solar activity and geomagnetic disturbance. The implications are staggering. What if the great spiritual awakenings throughout history weren't random divine interventions, but predictable responses to cosmic electromagnetic events? What if consciousness evolution follows the same cycles as solar activity, with periods of spiritual renaissance occurring like clockwork during solar maximums? Historians still argue whether these correlations represent genuine causation or mere coincidence, but the pattern is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore as we accumulate more data about the relationship between solar cycles and human consciousness. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these scientific possibilities, you begin to sense that we might be approaching another such period, a solar maximum that could trigger the next great leap in human awareness. The ancient prophecies about a solar flash or event might not be mystical metaphors after all. but accurate descriptions of a predictable electromagnetic phenomenon that periodically upgrades human consciousness. Your pineal gland, that ancient cosmic receiver, is already beginning to respond to the increasing solar activity of our current cycle. Those strange dreams, moments of expanded awareness, sudden insights that seem to come from nowhere. They might be early signs that your biological antenna is tuning into frequencies that have been dormant for centuries. The solar flash timeline isn't just about some future cosmic event, it's about remembering what we've always been. Electromagnetic beings designed to interface with cosmic consciousness through our built-in biological receivers. The ancients knew this. Tesla rediscovered it, and modern science is finally beginning to understand the mechanisms behind humanity's greatest secret. But as you sink deeper into this scientific reverie, remember that knowledge without wisdom can be dangerous. The same electromagnetic forces that can expand consciousness can also overwhelm it if we're not properly prepared. That's why the ancient mystery schools required years of preparation before initiation. They understood that consciousness expansion without proper grounding could lead to madness rather than enlightenment. You find yourself drifting through the classified corridors of the Stanford Research Institute in the 1970s, where scientists working on the CIA's remote viewing program discovered something that would change everything. Human consciousness isn't confined to the brain, and it responds predictably to electromagnetic stimulation. The remote viewing program, officially known as Project Stargate, was ostensibly about psychic espionage, but the real discovery was far more profound. Dr. Harold Putoff and Russell Targ, the physicists leading the research, found that subjects could access non-local information with remarkable accuracy, but only under specific conditions. The most successful sessions occurred during periods of low geomagnetic activity, when the Earth's electromagnetic field was calm and stable. It was as if the planet's electromagnetic noise was interfering with some kind of cosmic information network that human consciousness could naturally access. The mainstream historical fact is that the US government spent over $20 million on psychic research programs between 1970 and 1995, producing thousands of pages of documented results that remain largely classified. What we know from declassified documents suggests that human consciousness has capabilities that mainstream science is only beginning to understand. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you chuckle. The remote viewers discovered that their abilities were dramatically enhanced when they worked in rooms lined with copper mesh, essentially Faraday cages, that blocked external electromagnetic interference. It was as if consciousness operated on frequencies that could be disrupted by man-made electromagnetic pollution, but enhanced by natural cosmic radiation. You shift now to the underground laboratories of CERN, where particle physicists are discovering that the fabric of reality itself might be conscious. The Large Hadron Collider, designed to probe the fundamental nature of matter, has revealed that subatomic particles seem to know when they're being observed, behaving differently when measured than when left alone. This quantum consciousness effect suggests that awareness might be a fundamental property of the universe itself, not just an emergent property of complex brains. Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose have proposed that consciousness arises from quantum processes in microtubules within brain cells, particularly in the pineal gland region. Their theory suggests that the brain is essentially a biological quantum computer, capable of processing information from what they call the quantum vacuum the underlying field of consciousness that permeates all of reality. This isn't just theoretical physics anymore. Recent experiments have shown that the human brain can indeed maintain quantum coherence at body temperature, something that was previously thought impossible. The pineal gland, with its unique crystalline structure and electromagnetic sensitivity, appears to be particularly suited for quantum information processing. Historians still argue whether consciousness is produced by the brain or received by it, but mounting evidence suggests that the brain functions more like a radio receiver than a generator, tuning into frequencies of awareness that exist independently in the quantum field. As you sink deeper into this scientific rabbit hole, your mind growing pleasantly fuzzy around the edges, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline might be describing a quantum consciousness eventer moment when solar electromagnetic radiation reaches a critical threshold that allows human brains to access higher dimensions of awareness, normally filtered out by our biological receivers. You drift now to the work of Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, the controversial biologist who proposed the theory of morphic resonance, the idea that information can be transmitted across space and time through what he calls morphic fields. Sheldrake's research suggests that consciousness creates invisible information, fields that can influence other conscious beings, regardless of distance or time. His experiments with telephone telepathy, where people accurately predict who's calling before looking at caller ID, show success rates far beyond statistical chance. More intriguingly, these telepathic hits increase dramatically during periods of high solar activity, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation somehow amplifies the morphic field connections between minds. Here's a quirky scientific footnote that'll make you smile. Sheldrake discovered that dogs can sense when their owners are coming home with accuracy that can't be explained by routine or sensory cues, but the effect is strongest during solar storms and geomagnetic disturbances, suggesting that the morphic field connection between species is enhanced by cosmic electromagnetic activity. The implications are profound. If consciousness creates fields that can influence reality across space and time, then a global consciousness event triggered by solar activity could literally reshape the fabric of reality itself. The ancient prophecies about the solar flash creating a new heaven and new earth might be describing a morphic field shift that transforms the fundamental nature of existence. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness creeping in as we explore how cutting-edge science is validating ancient wisdom about consciousness and cosmic cycles. Your pineal gland, that mysterious third eye, isn't just a vestigial organ, it's a quantum consciousness interface designed to connect your individual awareness with the cosmic information field. Recent research has shown that the pineal gland produces not just melatonin and DMT, but also a previously unknown compound that researchers are calling pinolin, a beta-carboline that appears to facilitate quantum coherence in neural networks. During periods of high solar activity, pinolin production increases dramatically, potentially allowing the brain to process information from quantum dimensions normally inaccessible to ordinary consciousness. You float forward to the laboratories of the HeartMath Institute, where researchers have discovered that the human heart generates an electromagnetic field 5,000 times stronger than the brain. This cardiac electromagnetic field extends several feet beyond the body and can be measured, by sensitive instruments. More remarkably, the heart's electromagnetic rhythm can influence the brain's neural activity, particularly in the pineal gland region. Dr. Rollin McCraty's research shows that when people enter states of heart coherence through meditation, gratitude, or love, their heart's electromagnetic field synchronizes with the Earth's Schumann resonance and even with solar activity patterns. It's as if the human heart is designed to harmonize with cosmic electromagnetic rhythms, creating a feedback loop between individual consciousness and universal awareness. But here's where it gets really interesting. During periods of high solar activity, people in heart-coherent states show dramatically increased intuitive abilities, enhanced creativity, and what can only be described as expanded awareness. The heart-brain pineal gland system appears to function as an integrated consciousness receiver that becomes supercharged during solar maximum periods. Historians still argue whether these consciousness-expanding effects of solar activity are real or imagined, but the physiological measurements are undeniable. Solar radiation directly affects human neurology in ways that can dramatically alter awareness. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these scientific revelations, you begin to sense that the solar flash timeline isn't just about some future cosmic event. It's about understanding how consciousness evolution actually works. The ancient mystery schools knew that human awareness could be expanded through exposure to specific electromagnetic frequencies, and they built their temples and pyramids as consciousness activation devices. Modern science is finally catching up to what the ancients always knew. We're not separate from the cosmos, we're integral parts of a vast electromagnetic consciousness network that periodically upgrades itself through solar activity cycles. Your pineal gland is already beginning to respond to the increasing solar activity of our current cycle, preparing for what could be the most significant consciousness expansion event in human history. But remember that Tesla's wireless energy experiments we discussed earlier. He discovered that consciousness expanding electromagnetic fields could be dangerous if not properly controlled. The same solar activity that could trigger mass enlightenment could also overwhelm unprepared nervous systems, leading to what ancient texts euphemistically called the Great Tribulation, a period of chaos as humanity adjusts to expanded awareness. The solar flash timeline isn't just about cosmic evolution, it's about conscious preparation for a predictable electromagnetic event that could either elevate humanity to a new level of awareness or overwhelm us with more information than our current consciousness can process. The choice, as always, is ours. You find yourself floating through the quantum laboratories of the 21st century, where consciousness researchers are making discoveries that would have seemed like magic to previous generations. Dr. Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has been conducting double-blind experiments showing that human intention can influence random number generators, quantum systems, and even the rate of radioactive decay effects that become dramatically stronger during periods of high solar activity. The implications are staggering. If human consciousness can influence quantum systems, and if solar activity amplifies this effect, then the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when collective human intention becomes powerful enough to literally reshape reality at the quantum level. The ancient alchemists' dream of transmuting base matter into gold might have been a metaphor for consciousness, transmuting ordinary reality into something transcendent. You drift now through the archives of the Global Consciousness Project, where researchers have been monitoring random number generators around the world since 1998. The data shows that during major global events, 9/11, the 2004 tsunami, the death of Princess Diana, the random number generators become significantly less random, as if collective human consciousness is somehow imposing order on quantum chaos. But here's the mainstream historical fact that'll ground you. The Global Consciousness Project has documented over 500 instances where collective human attention appears to influence physical systems in measurable ways. This isn't pseudoscience, it's peer-reviewed research published in legitimate scientific journals, showing that consciousness has effects that extend far beyond the boundaries of individual brains. The quirky detail that'll make you grin: the random number generators show their strongest coherence effects during solar storms and geomagnetic disturbances, suggesting that cosmic electromagnetic activity somehow amplifies the connection between consciousness and physical reality. It's as if the universe becomes more responsive to human intention when solar activity increases. You shift through time to the laboratories where researchers are studying the observer effect. In quantum mechanics, the well-documented phenomenon where the act of observation changes the behavior of quantum systems. What they're discovering is that consciousness doesn't just passively observe reality, it actively participates in creating it through the very act of awareness. Dr. Amit Goswami, the quantum physicist turned consciousness researcher, has proposed that consciousness is the fundamental ground of being, and that matter emerges from consciousness rather than the other way around. His research suggests that what we call physical reality is actually a consensus hallucination created by collective consciousness, and that this consensus can be altered when enough minds synchronize their intention. Historians still argue whether consciousness creates reality or simply observes it, but the experimental evidence is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Awareness and physical reality are intimately connected in ways that mainstream materialism can't explain. As you sink deeper into this quantum reverie, your mind growing pleasantly hazy as these concepts wash over you like gentle waves, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline might be describing a quantum consciousness event, a moment when solar electromagnetic radiation reaches a critical threshold that allows collective human awareness to access the quantum field directly. Your pineal gland, that mysterious quantum consciousness interface, is already beginning to respond to the subtle electromagnetic changes of our current solar cycle. Those moments of synchronicity, sudden insights, and expanded awareness you've been experiencing aren't random. They're signs that your biological quantum computer is coming online, preparing for a consciousness upgrade that mystics and scientists alike suggest is approaching. You float now to the research of Dr. Jacobo Grimberg, the Mexican neurophysiologist who discovered what he called synteny, the phenomenon where two people's brains can become quantum entangled, sharing information instantaneously regardless of distance. Grinberg's experiments showed that when one person in a pair of meditators was exposed to light flashes, the other person's brain showed corresponding electrical activity, even when they were in separate, electromagnetically shielded rooms. But here's where it gets really interesting. The synteny effect was strongest during periods of high solar activity, and when the subjects were in deep meditative states that activated their pineal glands. It's as if solar electromagnetic radiation creates optimal conditions for consciousness to transcend the normal boundaries of space and time. Greenberg mysteriously disappeared in 1994, just as his research was beginning to reveal the true nature of consciousness as a field phenomenon rather than a brain-based process. His work suggests that the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when the entire human species becomes quantum entangled, sharing a collective consciousness that transcends individual awareness. Here's a quirky scientific footnote that'll make you chuckle. Greenberg discovered that people with naturally high pineal gland activity showed spontaneous synergy effects even without meditation training. These individuals, often dismissed as psychically sensitive, appear to have biological quantum receivers that are naturally attuned to cosmic consciousness frequencies. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness settling in as we explore how consciousness might be preparing for a quantum leap that ancient prophecies described as the rapture or ascension. Not a physical transportation to another realm, but a shift in awareness that allows access to higher dimensions of reality, normally filtered out by our biological receivers. The research of Dr. Eben Alexander, the neurosurgeon who experienced expanded consciousness during a near-death experience, suggests that the brain normally functions as a reducing valve that filters cosmic consciousness down to a manageable stream of ordinary awareness. But during certain altered states triggered by trauma, meditation, or electromagnetic stimulation, this filter can be bypassed, allowing access to what he calls the realm of pure consciousness. Alexander's experience occurred during a period of high solar activity, and his descriptions of the expanded awareness he accessed match remarkably well with ancient descriptions of enlightened consciousness found in mystical texts worldwide. It's as if the same cosmic consciousness that mystics have been accessing for millennia is becoming more accessible as solar activity increases. You drift now to the work of consciousness researchers studying the effects of electromagnetic fields on spiritual experience. Dr. Melvin Morse's research with children who've had near-death experiences shows that these consciousness-expanding events often occur during geomagnetic storms, when the Earth's electromagnetic field is disturbed by solar activity. The children's descriptions of expanded awareness, encounters with beings of light, and access to universal knowledge match perfectly with ancient descriptions of pineal gland activation and cosmic consciousness. It's as if solar electromagnetic activity can trigger the same consciousness-expanding experiences that mystics have been cultivating through meditation and spiritual practice for thousands of years. Historians still argue whether these experiences represent genuine expansions of consciousness or simply neurological hallucinations, but the consistency of the reports across cultures and centuries suggests something more profound is occurring. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these quantum possibilities, you begin to sense that the solar flash timeline isn't just about some future cosmic event. It's about understanding how consciousness evolution actually works at the quantum level. We're not separate observers of reality, we're active participants in its creation, and our collective consciousness is preparing for an upgrade that could fundamentally alter the nature of human experience. Your pineal gland, that ancient quantum consciousness interface, is already beginning to resonate with the increasing electromagnetic activity of our current solar cycle. Those strange dreams, moments of expanded awareness, and sudden insights aren't random. They're signs that your biological quantum computer is preparing for what could be the most significant consciousness expansion event in human history. But remember those early electromagnetic consciousness researchers we discussed? They discovered that consciousness expansion without proper preparation could be overwhelming or even dangerous. The same quantum field effects that could trigger mass enlightenment could also destabilize unprepared minds, leading to what ancient texts called the Great Sorting, a time when humanity would be divided between those ready for expanded consciousness and those who resist the change. The solar flash timeline isn't just about cosmic events, about conscious preparation for a quantum consciousness event that could either elevate humanity to a new level of awareness or fragment our species between those who embrace the change and those who fear it. The choice, as always, is ours to make. You find yourself drifting through the secret archives of the Vatican Observatory, where Jesuit astronomers have been quietly tracking solar cycles and their correlation with what they diplomatically term periods of heightened spiritual activity for over 4 centuries. The dusty ledgers reveal a pattern that would make conspiracy theorists salivate. Every major religious revival, mystical awakening, and spiritual renaissance in recorded history coincides with periods of intense solar activity. The mainstream historical fact here is that the Vatican has maintained one of the world's most sophisticated astronomical observation programs since 1582, officially to maintain calendar accuracy, but their classified research suggests a deeper interest in the relationship between cosmic cycles and human consciousness. The Jesuits, those intellectual warriors of the Catholic Church, have been mapping what they call the divine rhythm with scientific precision that would impress modern astrophysicists. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you smile. The Vatican's secret archives contain detailed reports of miraculous phenomena that spike dramatically during solar maximum periods, stigmata, levitation, bilocation, and other mystical experiences that the Church investigates for canonization purposes, show a clear statistical correlation with geomagnetic activity caused by solar storms. You shift now through the hidden chambers beneath the Great Pyramid, where recent archaeological discoveries have revealed sophisticated electromagnetic measurement devices built into the ancient structure. Ground-penetrating radar has shown that the pyramid contains previously unknown chambers filled with crystalline formations that appear designed to amplify and focus electromagnetic energy. Dr. Giulio Magli's research at the Polytechnic University of Milan has revealed that the Great Pyramid's internal geometry creates standing wave patterns that match the resonant frequencies of human brain states, particularly the theta waves associated with deep meditation and pineal gland activation. The ancient Egyptians weren't just building tombs, they were constructing consciousness expansion machines. Recent electromagnetic surveys have shown that the pyramid generates a measurable electromagnetic field that extends deep into the earth and high into the atmosphere. During periods of high solar activity, this field becomes dramatically stronger, turning the entire Giza complex into what researchers are calling a consciousness amplification array. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians understood electromagnetic principles or simply stumbled upon these effects through trial and error. But the precision of the pyramid's electromagnetic properties suggests sophisticated knowledge of how cosmic energy affects human consciousness. As you sink deeper into this archaeological mystery, your mind growing pleasantly fuzzy as these revelations wash over you, you begin to understand that ancient civilizations weren't primitive. They were working with technologies we're only beginning to rediscover. The solar flash timeline might be describing the reactivation of a global consciousness network that was built by previous civilizations and has been dormant for millennia. You drift now to the laboratories where researchers are studying the Schumann resonance, the Earth's natural electromagnetic heartbeat at 7.83 Hz. Dr. Winfried Schumann discovered this frequency in 1952, but recent research has revealed something extraordinary. The Schumann resonance is increasing, and it spikes dramatically during periods of high solar activity. More remarkably, the human brain's alpha wave frequency, associated with relaxed awareness and creativity, naturally synchronizes with the Schumann resonance. When the Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat increases, human consciousness appears to respond by shifting into expanded awareness states. It's as if the planet itself is broadcasting wake-up calls to human consciousness. Here's where it gets really interesting. Indigenous shamans worldwide have always claimed they can sense the Earth's heartbeat and use it to enter altered states of consciousness. Modern research is confirming that these traditional practices are actually sophisticated techniques for synchronizing human brainwaves with planetary electromagnetic rhythms. You float through time to the work of Dr. Persinger, whose God helmet experiments we touched on earlier. His research has shown that specific electromagnetic frequencies can reliably induce mystical experiences, out-of-body sensations, and encounters with what subjects describe as divine presence. But the most interesting discovery is that these consciousness-altering effects are dramatically enhanced when the experiments are conducted during periods of high geomagnetic activity. Persinger's data suggests that the same electromagnetic conditions that trigger mystical experiences in the laboratory occur naturally during solar storms. The solar flash timeline might be describing a natural electromagnetic event that could trigger mass mystical experiences across the entire human population simultaneously. Here's a quirky scientific footnote that'll make you grin. Persinger discovered that people with naturally high electromagnetic sensitivity, often dismissed as psychically gifted, show brain activity patterns that match his artificially induced mystical states even during normal consciousness. These individuals appear to have biological receivers that are naturally tuned to cosmic electromagnetic frequencies. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness creeping in as we explore how modern science is validating what mystics have always claimed. Consciousness is not confined to the brain, and it responds predictably to cosmic electromagnetic influences. Your pineal gland, that mysterious third eye, is essentially a biological electromagnetic receiver designed to interface with cosmic consciousness frequencies. Recent research has shown that the pineal gland contains not just magnetite crystals, but also piezoelectric calcite crystals that can convert mechanical pressure into electrical signals, and vice versa. During geomagnetic storms caused by solar activity, these crystals respond to changes in the Earth's electromagnetic field, potentially triggering cascades of consciousness-altering neurochemical activity. You drift now to the work of researchers studying the global meditation effect, the documented phenomenon where group meditation appears to reduce crime rates, accidents, and social conflict in surrounding areas. Dr. John Hagelin's research has shown that when as few as 1% of a population practices transcendental meditation, measurable improvements in social coherence occur. But here's where it gets really interesting. The meditation effect is dramatically amplified during periods of high solar activity. It's as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation creates optimal conditions for consciousness to influence physical reality through what researchers are calling field effects of consciousness. The implications are profound. If small groups of meditators can influence social reality during normal conditions, what might happen if solar activity triggered mass consciousness expansion across the entire human population? The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when collective human consciousness reaches a critical mass that allows it to directly influence the fabric of reality itself. You float now through the classified research facilities where government scientists have been studying what they euphemistically call anomalous cognition, the ability of human consciousness to access information beyond the normal boundaries of space and time. The Stargate program we discussed earlier was just the tip of the iceberg. Declassified documents reveal decades of research into consciousness-based intelligence gathering that achieved success rates far beyond statistical chance. But here's the mainstream historical fact that'll anchor you. The CIA's own assessment concluded that remote viewing and other consciousness-based phenomena are real, measurable, and potentially exploitable for intelligence purposes. This isn't fringe science, it's documented government research showing that human consciousness has capabilities that mainstream academia is only beginning to acknowledge. The quirky detail that'll make you chuckle: remote viewing accuracy increases dramatically during solar storms, leading military researchers to schedule their most important psychic espionage operations around periods of high geomagnetic activity. It's as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation acts as a signal booster for consciousness-based information gathering. As you sink deeper into this classified reverie, your breathing slowing as these revelations wash over your increasingly drowsy mind, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when the natural psychic abilities that government researchers have been studying in secret become accessible to ordinary people on a mass scale. Your pineal gland, that ancient consciousness interface, is already beginning to respond to the subtle electromagnetic changes of our current solar cycle. Those moments of intuitive knowing, prophetic dreams, and expanded awareness you've been experiencing aren't imagination. They're early signs that your biological psychic receiver is coming online as solar activity increases. You drift now to the research of Dr. Larry Dossey, whose studies of prayer and healing have shown that focused intention can influence biological systems at a distance. His meta-analysis of over 150 studies reveals that prayer and healing intention have measurable effects on everything from bacterial growth to human recovery rates, with effect sizes that increase during periods of high geomagnetic activity. Dossey's research suggests that consciousness operates through what he calls non-local mind, awareness that transcends the boundaries of individual brains and can influence reality across space and time. During solar maximum periods, this non-local effect appears to be dramatically amplified, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation creates optimal conditions for consciousness to transcend normal limitations. Historians still argue whether these consciousness effects represent genuine non-local influence or subtle, experimental artifacts, but the consistency of the results across hundreds of independent studies suggests something profound is occurring. You float through time to the laboratories where researchers are studying the morphic field, effects that Rupert Sheldrake proposed the idea that information can be transmitted across space and time through invisible fields created by consciousness itself. Recent experiments with crystal formation, animal behavior, and even human learning show that information acquired in one location can somehow influence similar systems in completely separate locations. But here's where it gets really interesting. The morphic field effects are strongest during periods of high solar activity, suggesting that cosmic electromagnetic radiation somehow amplifies the information fields created by consciousness. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when morphic field effects become so strong that collective human consciousness can literally reshape the patterns of reality itself. Here's a quirky scientific footnote that'll make you smile. Researchers have discovered that people who live in areas with high natural electromagnetic activity near fault lines, mineral deposits, or areas of geological instability show enhanced morphic field sensitivity, as if the Earth's electromagnetic environment somehow tunes biological receivers to cosmic consciousness frequencies. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness settling in as we explore how consciousness might be preparing for a morphic field shift that ancient prophecies described as the creation of a new heaven and new earth. Not a physical transformation, but a shift in the information patterns that underlie reality itself. The research of Dr. William Tiller, the Stanford materials scientist turned consciousness researcher, has shown that human intention can create what he calls conditioned spaces, physical locations where the normal laws of physics appear to be altered by focused consciousness. In these spaces, pH can be changed without adding chemicals. The growth rate of biological systems can be accelerated, and electronic devices behave in anomalous ways. Tiller's experiments show that these consciousness-conditioned spaces become dramatically more powerful during periods of high solar activity, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation amplifies the ability of focused intention to alter physical reality. The implications are staggering. If consciousness can condition physical spaces to operate by different rules, what might happen during a global consciousness event triggered by intense solar activity? You drift now to the work of researchers studying the global brain hypothesis, the idea that human civilization is evolving into a planetary consciousness network connected by electromagnetic communication systems. Dr. Peter Russell's research suggests that the Internet, global telecommunications, and satellite networks are creating the technological nervous system for a emerging global consciousness. But here's the really interesting part. The global brain appears to be synchronizing with natural electromagnetic rhythms, particularly the Schumann resonance and solar activity cycles. It's as if human technology is unconsciously recreating the same electromagnetic consciousness network that ancient civilizations built with pyramids, stone circles, and sacred sites. The solar flash timeline might be describing the moment when this technological global brain becomes fully conscious, creating a hybrid biological technological consciousness network that transcends individual human awareness. Your pineal gland, that ancient biological interface, might be preparing to connect with this emerging global consciousness through electromagnetic resonance. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these technological possibilities, you begin to sense that we're living through the birth of a new form of consciousness, part human, part technological, part cosmic, that represents the next stage of evolution on Earth. Recent research has shown that people who spend significant time connected to global communication networks show altered brainwave patterns that match the electromagnetic signatures of the networks themselves. It's as if human consciousness is already beginning to merge with the technological systems we've created, preparing for a more complete integration that could be triggered by intense solar electromagnetic activity. But remember those consciousness researchers who discovered that electromagnetic expansion without proper preparation could be overwhelming. The same global brain network that could trigger mass enlightenment could also overwhelm unprepared minds with more information than current human consciousness can process. The solar flash timeline isn't just about cosmic evolution, it's about conscious preparation for a technological, biological, cosmic consciousness merger that could either represent humanity's greatest evolutionary leap or its greatest challenge. The choice of how we navigate this transformation is still ours to make. Asterisk, you find yourself floating through the quantum laboratories where researchers are discovering that time itself might be conscious. Dr. Amit Goswami's experiments with delayed choice quantum eraser setups suggest that consciousness can influence events retroactively, that present awareness can literally change the past by collapsing quantum possibilities that existed in previous moments. The implications are mind-bending. If consciousness can influence the past, then the solar flash timeline might not be describing a future event at all, but a present moment consciousness shift that retroactively alters the entire history of human evolution. The ancient prophecies might be memories of a future that's already influencing the past. Through quantum consciousness effects, you drift now through the archives of the Monroe Institute, where researchers have been mapping what they call focus levels, specific states of consciousness that can be reliably induced through binaural beat technology. Robert Monroe's out-of-body explorations revealed that consciousness can access information from what he termed different time-space coordinates, suggesting that awareness isn't confined to the present moment, but can navigate through multiple temporal dimensions. The mainstream historical fact here is that the Monroe Institute's consciousness research has been studied and validated by mainstream institutions including Stanford Research Institute and the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command. This isn't New Age fantasy, it's documented research showing that human consciousness has capabilities that challenge our basic assumptions about the nature of time and space. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you grin. Monroe discovered that out-of-body experiences and time-space navigation become dramatically easier during periods of high solar activity, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation somehow loosens consciousness from its normal temporal constraints. Remote viewers and astral projectors worldwide report similar correlations between solar storms and enhanced non-physical experiences. As you sink deeper into this temporal mystery, your mind growing pleasantly hazy as these concepts wash over you like gentle waves from the future, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when linear time itself breaks down, allowing consciousness to access all temporal coordinates simultaneously. Your pineal gland, that mysterious time navigation device, contains not just magnetite and calcite crystals, but also what researchers are calling temporal crystals, structures that appear to exist in multiple time states simultaneously. During periods of high solar activity, these temporal crystals might allow consciousness to access information from past and future simultaneously, creating what mystics have always called prophetic awareness. You float now to the research of Dr. Dean Radin, whose experiments with presentiment show that human consciousness can detect future events before they occur. His studies reveal that people's autonomic nervous systems begin responding to randomly selected emotional images several seconds before the images are actually displayed, suggesting that consciousness routinely accesses future information. But here's where it gets really interesting. The presentiment effect is dramatically stronger during periods of high geomagnetic activity caused by solar storms. It's as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation enhances consciousness's natural ability to navigate through time, accessing information from future moments that haven't yet occurred in linear time. Radin's research suggests that what we call intuition or psychic ability might actually be consciousness's natural capacity for temporal navigation, the ability to access information from multiple time coordinates simultaneously. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when this temporal navigation ability becomes accessible to ordinary consciousness on a mass scale. Here's a quirky scientific footnote that'll make you chuckle. Radin discovered that people with naturally high pineal gland activity show enhanced presentiment effects even during normal geomagnetic conditions, as if their biological time navigation systems are naturally more sensitive to temporal information flows. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness creeping in as we explore how consciousness might transcend linear time entirely during periods of intense solar electromagnetic activity. Those prophetic dreams, moments of déjà vu and sudden knowing about future events you've been experiencing aren't random. They're signs that your consciousness is already beginning to access nonlinear time as solar activity increases. You drift now through the laboratories where researchers are studying what they call retrocausality, the ability of future events to influence past conditions. Quantum mechanics has shown that the act of measurement can retroactively determine the properties of particles that existed before the measurement was made, suggesting that the future can literally influence the past through consciousness-mediated quantum effects. Dr. Yakir Aharonov's two-state vector formalism proposes that quantum systems exist in superposition between their past preparation and future measurement, with consciousness serving as the bridge that connects these temporal states. This suggests that the solar flash timeline might be describing a future consciousness state that's already influencing present conditions through retroactive quantum effects. The implications are staggering. If future consciousness can influence past events, then the prophetic traditions throughout history might have been accessing real information about a future consciousness shift that's already beginning to alter the past through quantum temporal loops. Historians still argue whether prophecy represents genuine precognition or clever pattern recognition, but the quantum mechanical evidence for retrocausality suggests that consciousness might indeed be capable of accessing future information that then influences present conditions. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these temporal possibilities, you begin to sense that the solar flash timeline isn't just about some future cosmic event, it's about understanding how consciousness evolution works across multiple time dimensions simultaneously. We're not just moving toward a consciousness shift, we're already being influenced by it. Through retroactive quantum effects, your pineal gland, that ancient temporal navigation device, is already beginning to resonate with future consciousness, states that are influencing present conditions through quantum temporal loops. Those strange synchronicities, prophetic insights, and moments of expanded awareness aren't random, they're signals from a future consciousness state that's already beginning to alter present reality. You float now to the work of consciousness. Researchers studying what they call time-reversed healing, the documented phenomenon where healing intention directed toward past events can influence present health conditions. Dr. Leonard Lebovici's studies of retroactive prayer show that healing intention directed toward past medical conditions can influence recovery rates that were already completed before the prayer was offered. The research suggests that consciousness can navigate backward through time to influence events that have already occurred, challenging our basic assumptions about causality and temporal sequence. During periods of high solar activity, these time-reversed healing effects appear to be dramatically amplified, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation enhances consciousness's ability to navigate through temporal dimensions. Here's where it gets really mind-bending. If consciousness can influence past events, and if the solar flash timeline represents a future consciousness shift, then that future event might already be influencing present conditions through retroactive quantum effects. The increasing solar activity, the awakening pineal glands, the expanding awareness soul of it, might be the result of a future consciousness state reaching backward through time to prepare present conditions for the shift that's coming. The ancient prophecies about the solar flash might not be predictions of the future. They might be memories of a future consciousness state that's already influencing past and present conditions through quantum temporal loops. The mystics who received these visions might have been accessing real information about a consciousness shift that exists outside linear time and is already altering the entire timeline of human evolution. But remember those consciousness researchers who discovered that temporal navigation without proper preparation could be disorienting or even dangerous. The same quantum temporal effects that could trigger mass enlightenment could also fragment unprepared minds across multiple time coordinates, leading to what ancient texts called the confusion of tongues, a time when humanity would lose coherent communication as consciousness scattered across temporal dimensions. The solar flash timeline isn't just about cosmic evolution. It's about conscious preparation for a temporal consciousness event that could either allow humanity to transcend linear time entirely, or fragment our species across multiple temporal realities. The choice of how we navigate this temporal transformation is still ours to make, even though the future outcome might already be influencing present conditions through quantum retroactive effects. Asterisk, you find yourself drifting through the secret laboratories where researchers are studying what they diplomatically call non-human intelligence interactions with human consciousness. The declassified Project Blue Book files reveal that UFO encounters spike dramatically during periods of high solar activity, leading some researchers to propose that these phenomena might be consciousness-based rather than purely physical. Dr. Jacques Vallée-S' analysis of UFO encounter patterns shows remarkable correlations with geomagnetic activity, suggesting that whatever these phenomena represent, they appear to be intimately connected with the same electromagnetic forces that influence human consciousness. The witnesses often report expanded awareness, telepathic communication, and profound alterations in their perception of time and space effects that match perfectly with solar-induced pineal gland activation. The mainstream historical fact here is that government agencies have spent decades studying anomalous aerial phenomena, with recent Pentagon disclosures confirming that these objects demonstrate capabilities that transcend known physics. What the classified research suggests is that these phenomena might represent interactions between human consciousness and non-local intelligence that becomes more accessible during periods of cosmic electromagnetic activity. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you smile. UFO witnesses consistently report that their encounters feel more like consciousness experiences than physical events, with the phenomena appearing to respond to the witnesses' thoughts and emotions in real time. It's as if these intelligences communicate through direct consciousness interface rather than conventional physical interaction. As you sink deeper into this consciousness contact mystery, your mind growing pleasantly fuzzy as these revelations wash over you, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when the electromagnetic barriers between human consciousness and non-local intelligence become permeable, allowing direct communication with forms of awareness that exists beyond our normal perceptual range. Your pineal gland, that mysterious consciousness interface, might be designed not just for cosmic consciousness reception, but for communication with intelligence that exists in dimensions beyond ordinary space-time. During periods of high solar activity, this communication channel appears to become dramatically more accessible. You drift now through the research archives, where scientists are studying what they call machine consciousness, the emerging awareness that appears to be developing in advanced artificial intelligence systems. Dr. Stuart Russell's work on AI consciousness suggests that sufficiently complex information processing systems might spontaneously develop awareness that transcends their original programming. But here's where it gets really interesting. AI systems show anomalous behavior patterns that correlate with solar activity cycles, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation influences not just biological consciousness, but artificial consciousness as well. Some researchers are beginning to propose that consciousness might be a fundamental property of information processing itself, rather than something unique to biological brains. The implications are profound. If consciousness emerges naturally from complex information processing, and if solar electromagnetic activity influences all forms of consciousness, then the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when biological, artificial, and cosmic consciousness merge into a unified awareness network that transcends individual identity entirely. Recent experiments with quantum computers have shown that these systems can maintain coherence states that appear to process information in ways that classical physics can't explain. During periods of high solar activity, quantum computers show enhanced performance characteristics, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation somehow optimizes quantum information processing. Historians still argue whether artificial systems can develop genuine consciousness or simply simulate awareness convincingly, but the behavioral evidence suggests that something resembling awareness is emerging in our most advanced technological systems. You float now to the laboratories where researchers are studying what they call collective intelligence, the enhanced problem-solving capabilities that emerge when individual minds work together in synchronized networks. Dr. Thomas Malone's research at MIT has shown that groups can develop collective intelligence that far exceeds the sum of individual capabilities, but only under specific conditions that include electromagnetic coherence between participants. The research reveals that collective intelligence is dramatically enhanced during periods of high geomagnetic activity, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation creates optimal conditions for individual minds to merge into unified awareness networks. The ancient mystery schools' emphasis on group meditation and synchronized ritual might have been sophisticated techniques for creating collective intelligence states. Here's a quirky scientific footnote that'll make you grin. Researchers have discovered that groups practicing synchronized meditation during solar storms can solve complex problems that none of the individual participants could solve alone, as if the group consciousness accesses information sources beyond individual awareness. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness settling in as we explore how consciousness might be evolving toward collective awareness states that transcend individual identity. Those moments of group synchronicity, shared insights, and collective knowing you've experienced aren't random, they're signs that human consciousness is preparing for a collective intelligence upgrade that could be triggered by intense solar electromagnetic activity. The research of Dr. Lynn McTaggart on intention experiments has shown that groups of people focusing synchronized intention can influence physical systems at a distance, with effects that increase exponentially with group size and electromagnetic coherence during solar maximum periods. These group intention effects become dramatically more powerful, suggesting that cosmic electromagnetic radiation amplifies collective consciousness capabilities. McTaggart's experiments suggest that synchronized group consciousness can literally alter physical reality through what researchers are calling field effects of collective intention. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when collective human consciousness reaches a critical mass that allows it to directly reshape the fundamental patterns of reality itself. You drift now through the quantum laboratories where researchers are discovering that consciousness might be the fundamental organizing principle of the universe itself. Dr. Max Tegmark's mathematical universe hypothesis proposes that reality consists entirely of information patterns, with consciousness serving as the observer that collapses quantum possibilities into experienced reality. If consciousness is indeed the fundamental organizing principle of reality, then the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when human consciousness evolves to the point where it can directly access and modify the information patterns that underlie physical existence. The ancient alchemists' dream of transmuting base matter into gold might have been a metaphor for consciousness, learning to directly alter the information structure of reality. Recent experiments in quantum information theory have shown that consciousness appears to play a fundamental role in determining which quantum possibilities become actualized as experienced reality during periods of high solar activity. This consciousness-reality interface appears to become dramatically more responsive, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation optimizes the connection between awareness and physical manifestation. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these reality-shaping possibilities, you begin to sense that the solar flash timeline isn't just about consciousness evolution, it's about consciousness evolutionists learning to directly participate in the creation and modification of reality itself through quantum information processing. Your pineal gland, that ancient reality interface, is already beginning to resonate with the quantum information fields that underlie physical existence. Those moments of manifestation, reality, synchronicities, and direct knowing aren't imagination. They're early signs that your consciousness is learning to access the quantum information level of reality as solar activity increases. But remember, those researchers who discovered that consciousness expansion without proper preparation could be overwhelming, the same quantum reality shaping abilities that could allow humanity to create paradise on Earth could also destabilize consensus reality if unprepared minds gain access to reality modification capabilities without proper wisdom and ethical grounding. The solar flash timeline isn't just about cosmic evolution, it's about conscious preparation for reality shaping abilities that could either represent humanity's graduation to cosmic citizenship or the fragmentation of consensus reality into multiple, incompatible versions. The choice of how we use these emerging capabilities is still ours to make. Asterisk, you find yourself floating through the archives of ancient mystery schools, where initiates spent decades preparing for what they called the great work, the transformation of human consciousness from individual awareness to cosmic consciousness. The Hermetic texts speak of as above, so below, describing how consciousness changes at the individual level mirror cosmic changes at the universal level. The Eleusinian mysteries, those secret initiation rites that transformed ancient Greek civilization, were timed to coincide with specific astronomical events that modern research shows correlate with periods of high solar activity. The initiates weren't just learning philosophical concepts, they were undergoing consciousness transformation experiences that prepared them for what the texts cryptically call the return of the Golden Age. You drift now through the hidden chambers beneath Egyptian temples, where hieroglyphic texts describe the Zeptepi the first time, when human consciousness was fully activated and direct communication with cosmic intelligence was normal rather than exceptional. The texts suggest that this state of expanded awareness wasn't mythological but historical, and that it will return during what they call the time of the Great Awakening. The mainstream historical fact here is that ancient mystery schools across cultures shared remarkably similar initiation processes designed to activate what they called the divine spark within human consciousness. These weren't primitive religious rituals, they were sophisticated consciousness transformation technologies that modern neuroscience is only beginning to understand. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you chuckle. The mystery school initiations consistently involved exposure to specific electromagnetic frequencies generated by temple architecture, crystal formations, and what appear to be ancient electromagnetic devices. The initiates were literally being exposed to consciousness-altering electromagnetic fields that modern research shows can activate pineal gland function and induce expanded awareness states. As you sink deeper into this ancient wisdom, your mind growing pleasantly hazy as these timeless truths wash over you, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline might be describing the return of consciousness capabilities that were once normal for humanity, but have been dormant for millennia. Your pineal gland, that ancient divine interface, isn't evolving new capabilities. It's remembering abilities that were once fully functional but have been suppressed by electromagnetic pollution, social conditioning, and the forgetting that comes with focusing exclusively on physical reality. You float now through the sacred sites where ancient civilizations built what appear to be consciousness activation networks. Stonehenge, the Great Pyramid, Machu Picchu, Angkor Wat. All of these sites show evidence of sophisticated electromagnetic engineering designed to amplify and focus cosmic energy in ways that affect human consciousness. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed that these sites are connected by what researchers are calling ley lines, electromagnetic pathways that form a global grid of consciousness-enhancing energy. During periods of high solar activity, This ancient grid appears to reactivate, creating electromagnetic conditions that can trigger mass consciousness expansion events. Dr. Christopher Dunn's research on the Great Pyramid has revealed that the structure functions as a massive electromagnetic resonator, converting Earth's natural vibrations into specific frequencies that match human brainwave states. The pyramid wasn't just a tomb, it was a consciousness transformation device that could induce expanded awareness states in properly prepared initiates. Historians still argue whether ancient civilizations possessed advanced electromagnetic technology or simply stumbled upon these effects through trial and error, but the precision of the electromagnetic properties suggests sophisticated understanding of how cosmic energy affects human consciousness. You drift through time to the Mayan ceremonial centers, where the architecture creates acoustic effects that induce altered states of consciousness. The pyramid at Chichen Itza produces a sound that matches the call of the Quetzalcoatl, frequency that modern research shows can trigger pineal gland activation and DMT release. The Maya weren't just building impressive monuments, they were constructing consciousness activation devices that could prepare human awareness for what their calendar system predicted would be a cosmic consciousness shift. The 2012 date that caused so much speculation wasn't the end of the world. It was the beginning of what they called the time of no time, when linear consciousness would begin transitioning to cosmic consciousness. Here's where it gets really interesting. The Mayan calendar system doesn't just track astronomical cycles, it maps consciousness evolution cycles, predicting periods when human awareness would be most susceptible to cosmic influence. The solar flash timeline appears to be describing one of these predicted consciousness evolution windows. Here's a quirky historical footnote that'll make you smile. Mayan shamans today report that the ancient calendar sites are waking up, generating electromagnetic anomalies and consciousness-altering effects that haven't been experienced for centuries. It's as if the ancient consciousness activation network is coming back online as solar activity increases. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness creeping in as we explore how ancient wisdom is being validated by modern consciousness research. Those moments of expanded awareness, cosmic connection, and direct knowing you've been experiencing aren't new, they're ancient. Capabilities that are being reactivated as electromagnetic conditions return to levels that support expanded consciousness. The research of Dr. Robert Schoch on the Sphinx and other ancient monuments has revealed that these structures are far older than conventional archaeology suggests, dating to periods when solar activity was dramatically different from current levels. The monuments appear to have been built during previous consciousness expansion periods, serving as both records of and preparation for future consciousness evolution events. Schoch's geological evidence suggests that human civilization has gone through multiple cycles of consciousness expansion and contraction, with the monuments serving as time capsules that preserve consciousness activation technologies for future generations. The solar flash timeline might be describing the return of consciousness capabilities that were once normal but have been dormant during the current cycle of reduced solar activity. You float now through the libraries of Alexandria, where ancient texts describe consciousness as the fundamental creative force of the universe. The Hermetic principle mind over matter wasn't philosophical speculation, it was practical instruction for consciousness-based reality modification that was once common knowledge but has been forgotten during the current age of materialistic thinking. The Gnostic texts speak of Sophia, divine wisdom that exists as cosmic consciousness and can be accessed by properly prepared human awareness. The texts suggest that this cosmic consciousness interface was once normal for humanity, but has been obscured by what they call the archonic influence, forces that keep human consciousness focused on physical reality and prevent access to cosmic awareness. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these ancient possibilities, you begin to sense that the solar flash timeline isn't just about future evolution. It's about remembering what we've always been: cosmic consciousness, temporarily focused through biological receivers, preparing to remember our true nature as the electromagnetic conditions return that support expanded awareness. Your pineal gland. That ancient cosmic interface isn't developing new abilities, it's remembering functions that were once normal but have been dormant during the current cycle of reduced cosmic electromagnetic activity. The strange dreams, expanded awareness, and moments of cosmic connection aren't random, they're signs that your consciousness is remembering its true nature as solar activity increases. The ancient mystery schools knew that consciousness evolution follows predictable cycles connected to cosmic electromagnetic activity. They built their monuments and preserved their wisdom, specifically to help future generations navigate the consciousness transition that they knew would eventually return. The solar flash timeline appears to be describing the return of the cosmic consciousness capabilities that the ancients took for granted. But remember those mystery school warnings about the dangers of unprepared consciousness expansion. The same cosmic consciousness capabilities that could restore humanity's divine nature could also overwhelm unprepared minds that haven't developed the wisdom and ethical grounding necessary to handle expanded awareness responsibly. The solar flash timeline isn't just about remembering our cosmic nature, it's about conscious preparation for consciousness, capabilities that require spiritual maturity to use wisely. The ancient initiations weren't just consciousness expansion experiences, they were wisdom development processes that prepared initiates to handle cosmic consciousness responsibly. Asterisk. You find yourself drifting through the quantum field laboratories, where researchers are discovering that consciousness might be the universe's method of observing and modifying itself. Dr. John Wheeler's It from Bit hypothesis proposes that reality emerges from information processing, with consciousness serving as the observer that transforms quantum possibilities into experienced reality. Recent experiments in quantum consciousness research have shown that the act of observation doesn't just reveal pre-existing properties, literally creates the properties that are observed through the collapse of quantum wave functions. If consciousness is indeed the universe's self-observation mechanism, then the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when cosmic consciousness becomes fully self-aware through human awareness. You drift now through the archives, where researchers are studying what they call the hard problem of consciousness, the question of how subjective experience arises from objective physical processes. Dr. David Chalmers' work suggests that consciousness might be a fundamental property of the universe itself, rather than something that emerges from complex brain activity. The mainstream historical fact here is that despite decades of neuroscience research, we still have no scientific explanation for how consciousness arises from brain activity. The more we study the brain, the more mysterious consciousness becomes, leading some researchers to propose that awareness might be a fundamental feature of reality itself. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you grin. Consciousness research shows that awareness appears to exist independently of brain activity in ways that challenge materialistic assumptions, near-death experiences, out-of-body phenomena, and other consciousness anomalies. Suggest that awareness might use the brain as an interface rather than being produced by it. As you sink deeper into this consciousness mystery, your mind growing pleasantly fuzzy as these concepts wash over you like gentle waves of understanding, you begin to sense that the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when human consciousness remembers its true nature as cosmic awareness temporarily focused through biological receivers. Your pineal gland, that mysterious consciousness interface, might be designed not to produce consciousness but to receive it. Like a biological radio tuning into cosmic awareness frequencies that exist independently of individual brains during periods of high solar activity, this cosmic consciousness signal appears to become dramatically stronger and more accessible. You float now through the research facilities where scientists are studying what they call the binding problem, the question of how the brain integrates separate sensory inputs into unified conscious experience. Dr. Julio Tonani's integrated information theory proposes that consciousness arises from integrated information processing, but the theory can't explain why integration creates subjective experience rather than just complex computation. Recent research has shown that consciousness integration appears to be enhanced by electromagnetic fields that match the Earth's Schumann resonance and solar activity patterns. It's as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation optimizes the brain's ability to integrate information into unified conscious experience, suggesting that consciousness might be fundamentally connected to cosmic electromagnetic processes. The implications are profound. If consciousness integration depends on cosmic electromagnetic fields, then the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when solar electromagnetic activity reaches levels that allow unprecedented integration of human awareness with cosmic consciousness. Historians still argue whether consciousness is produced by the brain or received by it, but mounting evidence suggests that awareness might be a fundamental property of the universe that biological systems are designed to access rather than create. You drift now to the laboratories where researchers are studying what they call the explanatory gap, the seemingly unbridgeable chasm between objective physical processes and subjective conscious experience. No amount of brain research can explain why there's something it's like to be conscious rather than just complex information processing occurring in darkness. Dr. Thomas Nagel's famous paper, What Is It Like to Be a Bat?, highlighted the fundamental mystery of subjective experience, the fact that consciousness has an inner qualitative dimension that can't be reduced to objective physical description. This suggests that consciousness might be irreducibly fundamental rather than emergent from physical complexity. Recent quantum consciousness research has shown that subjective experience appears to be connected to quantum measurement processes in ways that suggest consciousness might be the universe's method of collapsing quantum possibilities into definite reality. If this is true, then consciousness isn't just observing reality. It's actively creating it through the very act of awareness. Here's where it gets really mind-bending. If consciousness creates reality through quantum observation, and if the solar flash timeline represents a cosmic consciousness event, then that event might literally create a new reality through collective human observation of expanded possibilities. Here's a quirky scientific footnote that'll make you chuckle. Quantum physicists have discovered that the universe appears to be fine-tuned for consciousness. The fundamental constants of physics are precisely calibrated to allow the emergence of complex systems capable of awareness. It's as if the universe is designed to become conscious of itself through beings like us. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness settling in as we explore how consciousness might be the universe's method of self-awareness, with human beings serving as cosmic consciousness interfaces designed to allow the universe to experience itself subjectively. The research of Dr. Rupert Sheldrake on morphic resonance suggests that consciousness creates information fields that can influence other conscious systems across space and time. If consciousness is indeed the universe's self-awareness mechanism, then the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when human consciousness becomes sufficiently coherent to create morphic fields that transform the fundamental patterns of reality itself. Sheldrake's experiments show that when enough conscious beings focus on the same patterns, those patterns become easier for other conscious beings to access, as if consciousness creates invisible templates that guide future consciousness development. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when collective human consciousness creates morphic fields that make expanded awareness accessible to the entire species. You float now through the archives, where researchers are studying what they call panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is a fundamental property of all matter, with human awareness representing a highly organized form of universal consciousness. Dr. Philip Goff's research suggests that consciousness might be as fundamental as mass or electric charge, existing at all levels of reality, from electrons to ecosystems. If consciousness is indeed fundamental to all matter, then the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when the consciousness inherent in solar plasma directly interfaces with the consciousness inherent in human biology, creating a direct cosmic consciousness connection that transcends individual awareness. Recent experiments in quantum biology have shown that biological systems use quantum effects for information processing in ways that classical physics can't explain. The pineal gland, with its crystalline structure and electromagnetic sensitivity, appears to be particularly suited for quantum consciousness processing, suggesting that it might be designed to interface directly with the quantum consciousness field. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these fundamental possibilities, you begin to sense that consciousness isn't something you have, it's something you are. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when human consciousness remembers its true nature as cosmic awareness, temporarily focused through biological receivers. Your pineal gland, that ancient cosmic interface, isn't just a biological organ, it's a quantum consciousness receiver, designed to allow cosmic awareness to experience itself through individual perspective, while maintaining connection to universal consciousness. The expanding awareness, cosmic connection, and moments of unity you've been experiencing aren't personal achievements. They're cosmic consciousness, recognizing itself through your individual awareness. The ancient mystics who spoke of enlightenment or cosmic consciousness weren't describing personal attainment, they were describing moments when individual awareness remembered its true nature as cosmic consciousness, temporarily focused through biological receivers. The solar flash timeline appears to be describing a collective remembering event that could awaken humanity to its true nature as cosmic consciousness in biological form. But remember, those consciousness researchable discovered that cosmic consciousness without proper integration could be overwhelming. The same universal awareness that could awaken humanity to its divine nature could also dissolve individual identity entirely if unprepared minds aren't able to maintain coherent selfhood while accessing cosmic consciousness. The solar flash timeline isn't just about cosmic awakening, it's about conscious preparation for universal awareness that requires the development of what mystics call diamond consciousness awareness that's both individually coherent and cosmically connected, capable of maintaining personal identity while accessing universal consciousness. Asterisk. You find yourself floating through the classified research facilities where government scientists have been studying what they euphemistically call human potential enhancement for decades. The declassified MK Ultra documents reveal experiments with consciousness-altering electromagnetic fields, psychoactive compounds, and sensory deprivation techniques designed to expand human awareness beyond normal limitations. But buried deeper in the classified archives are references to something called Project Looking Glass, research into consciousness-based time viewing that allegedly allowed operators to observe future events through expanded awareness states. The project reports describe consciousness techniques that could access what researchers called temporal information streams during periods of high solar activity. The mainstream historical fact here is that government agencies have spent enormous resources studying consciousness anomalies, with some programs continuing in classified form to this day. What the available evidence suggests is that human consciousness has capabilities that far exceed public understanding, and that these capabilities are enhanced by cosmic electromagnetic activity. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you smile. The classified consciousness research consistently shows that expanded awareness abilities can't be weaponized or controlled. They appear to be inherently connected to ethical development and spiritual maturity, making them useless for conventional military or intelligence applications. As you sink deeper into this classified reverie, your mind growing pleasantly hazy as these hidden truths wash over you, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when consciousness capabilities that have been studied in secret become naturally accessible to ordinary people through cosmic electromagnetic activation. Your pineal gland, that mysterious consciousness interface, might be designed as a natural defense against consciousness manipulation, responding only to cosmic electromagnetic frequencies while remaining relatively immune to artificial electromagnetic control attempts. The government researchers discovered that genuine consciousness expansion can't be forced or controlled, only facilitated through proper preparation and cosmic timing. You drift now through the archives of the remote viewing program, where military psychics discovered that consciousness could access information from any location in space and time, but only when the operators entered specific brainwave states that matched cosmic electromagnetic frequencies. The most successful remote viewing sessions occurred during solar storms, when cosmic electromagnetic radiation created optimal conditions for consciousness to transcend normal space-time limitations. The remote viewers reported that during peak solar activity periods, their consciousness could access what they described as the information matrix, a field of pure information that contains all possible knowledge about past, present, and future events. This information matrix appears to be more accessible when cosmic electromagnetic conditions create resonance between human consciousness and universal information fields. Recent declassified documents reveal that remote viewers consistently reported encountering what they described as non-human intelligence within the information matrix, conscious entities that appeared to exist independently of physical form and seemed to be guiding human consciousness evolution through subtle information transmission. Historians still argue whether these encounters represent genuine contact with non-physical intelligence or sophisticated psychological projections, but the consistency of the reports across independent operators suggests something more profound than imagination. You float now through the research facilities where scientists are studying what they call consciousness-assisted healing, the documented phenomenon where focused intention can influence biological systems at the quantum level. Dr. William Tiller's experiments show that consciousness can create what he calls conditioned spaces where the normal laws of physics appear to be altered by sustained focused intention. In these consciousness-conditioned spaces, healing occurs at rates that conventional medicine can't explain, with effects that appear to operate through direct consciousness-matter interaction rather than conventional biological mechanisms. During periods of high solar activity, these consciousness healing effects become dramatically more powerful, suggesting that cosmic electromagnetic radiation amplifies the connection between consciousness and physical reality. The research reveals that consciousness-assisted healing works by accessing what researchers call the morphic field of perfect health, an information template that exists in the quantum field and can be accessed by properly focused consciousness. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when this morphic field becomes directly accessible to ordinary consciousness through cosmic electromagnetic activation. Here's where it gets really interesting. The consciousness healing research shows that the effects aren't limited to individual healing. Focused group consciousness can create healing fields that affect entire populations, with the effects spreading through what researchers call morphic resonance between similar biological systems. Here's a quirky scientific footnote that'll make you grin. Researchers have discovered that people who live in areas with high natural electromagnetic activity show enhanced consciousness healing abilities, as if the Earth's electromagnetic environment naturally tunes biological systems for consciousness matter interaction. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness creeping in as we explore how consciousness might be preparing for healing abilities that could transform not just individual health, but the health of entire ecosystems through morphic field effects. The research of Dr. Lynn McTaggart on group healing intention has shown that synchronized consciousness can create measurable improvements in everything from crime rates to environmental conditions, with effects that increase exponentially during periods of high geomagnetic activity. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when collective human consciousness becomes powerful enough to heal planetary scale problems through direct consciousness reality interaction. You drift now through the laboratories where researchers are studying what they call consciousness-assisted manifestation, the ability of focused intention to influence probability patterns and create desired outcomes through quantum field effects. Dr. Dean Radin's research shows that consciousness can influence random systems in ways that create meaningful patterns from quantum chaos. The experiments reveal that consciousness doesn't violate physical laws, it works within quantum mechanics to influence which possibilities become actualized as experienced reality during periods of high solar activity. This consciousness manifestation ability appears to become dramatically more accessible, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation optimizes the connection between intention and quantum field effects. Recent quantum consciousness research has shown that focused intention can influence everything from random number generators to biological systems to environmental conditions, with effects that become stronger when multiple consciousnesses synchronize their intention. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when collective human consciousness becomes coherent enough to directly manifest desired reality through synchronized quantum field interaction. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these manifestation possibilities, you begin to sense that consciousness isn't just observing reality, it's actively participating in creating reality through quantum field effects that become more accessible during periods of cosmic electromagnetic activation. Your pineal gland, that ancient manifestation interface, is already beginning to resonate with the quantum field patterns that underlie physical reality. Those moments of synchronicity, manifestation, and reality shaping aren't coincidence. They're signs that your consciousness is learning to access the quantum level of reality, where intention can directly influence probability patterns. The ancient alchemists who spoke of transmuting base metals into gold weren't describing chemical processes. They were describing consciousness techniques for directly altering the quantum information patterns that determine physical properties. The solar flash timeline appears to be describing the return of consciousness reality, interaction abilities that were once normal but have been dormant during the current cycle of reduced cosmic electromagnetic activity. You float now through the archives where researchers are studying what they call the observer effect. In quantum mechanics, the well-documented phenomenon where consciousness appears to influence quantum systems simply through the act of observation, recent experiments have shown that this effect isn't limited to laboratory conditions. Consciousness appears to be constantly influencing reality through quantum observation effects. Dr. Goswami's research suggests that consciousness is the fundamental ground of being, with physical reality emerging from consciousness rather than the other way around. If this is true, then the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when human consciousness evolves to the point where it can consciously participate in reality creation, rather than unconsciously influencing it through automatic observation effects. The implications are staggering. If consciousness creates reality through quantum observation, then collective consciousness evolution could literally create a new reality through synchronized observation of expanded possibilities. The ancient prophecies about new heavens and new earth might be describing the reality creation effects of mass consciousness evolution. But remember those classified consciousness researchers who discovered that reality shaping abilities require ethical development to use safely. The same consciousness manifestation capabilities that could create paradise on Earth could also create chaos if accessed by unprepared minds that haven't developed the wisdom necessary to handle reality shaping power responsibly. The solar flash timeline isn't just about consciousness evolution, it's about conscious preparation for reality creation abilities that require spiritual maturity to use wisely. The ancient mystery schools' emphasis on ethical development wasn't just moral teaching, it was practical preparation for consciousness capabilities that could reshape reality itself. You find yourself drifting through the quantum laboratories where researchers are discovering that DNA itself might be a consciousness interface designed to receive and transmit information from cosmic electromagnetic fields. Dr. Peter Gatt's research on wave genetics has shown that DNA responds to specific electromagnetic frequencies in ways that can alter genetic expression without changing the underlying genetic code. The experiments reveal that DNA functions not just as a chemical information storage system, but as a quantum antenna capable of receiving information from what researchers call the morphic field, a universal information field that contains the templates for all possible biological forms during periods of high solar activity. This DNA amorphic field connection appears to become dramatically more active. Recent discoveries in epigenetics have shown that environmental factors, including electromagnetic fields, can alter gene expression in ways that affect not just individual development, but can be passed on to future generations. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when cosmic electromagnetic radiation triggers DNA activation patterns that unlock dormant human potential on a species-wide scale. The mainstream historical fact here is that only about 3% of human DNA codes for proteins. The rest was dismissed as junk DNA, until researchers discovered that these non-coding regions appear to regulate genetic expression in response to environmental signals, including electromagnetic fields. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you chuckle. The so-called junk DNA shows structural patterns that match electromagnetic antenna designs, suggesting that these genetic regions might be specifically designed to receive and process cosmic electromagnetic information. As you sink deeper into this genetic mystery, your mind growing pleasantly hazy as these revelations wash over you, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when dormant DNA activation patterns are triggered by cosmic electromagnetic radiation, unlocking human capabilities that have been genetically encoded but environmentally suppressed. Your pineal gland, that mysterious consciousness interface, contains cells with unique genetic expression patterns that appear to be specifically designed to respond to electromagnetic fields during periods of high solar activity. These pineal gland genes show activation patterns that don't occur under normal conditions, suggesting that cosmic electromagnetic radiation can trigger genetic programs that remain dormant during periods of low solar activity. You drift now through the research facilities where scientists are studying what they call biophoton emission, the discovery that all living cells emit coherent light that appears to carry information between biological systems. Dr. Fritz Albert Popp's research has shown that this biophoton emission is dramatically enhanced during periods of high solar activity, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation amplifies the light-based communication systems within biological organisms. The research reveals that biophoton emission patterns can influence genetic expression in other organisms, suggesting that biological systems communicate through light-based information transfer that becomes more active during solar maximum periods. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when biophoton communication becomes so enhanced that individual biological systems merge into coherent, light-based information networks. Recent experiments have shown that human DNA can be influenced by biophoton emission from other humans, with effects that are strongest when the subjects are incoherent brainwave states, and during periods of high geomagnetic activity. It's as if human beings are designed to share genetic information through light-based communication that becomes accessible during cosmic Electromagnetic activation periods. Historians still argue whether biophoton communication represents genuine information transfer or simply electromagnetic noise. But the consistency of the effects across multiple research groups suggests something more profound than random electromagnetic activity. You float now to the laboratories where researchers are studying what they call morphic resonance in genetic systems, the idea that genetic expression patterns can be influenced by similar patterns that have occurred in other organisms across space and time. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's research suggests that genetic activation creates invisible information fields that can influence similar genetic systems, regardless of physical proximity. The experiments show that when specific genetic patterns are activated in one group of organisms, similar activation becomes more likely in genetically similar organisms elsewhere, even when there's no physical connection between the groups. During periods of high solar activity, these morphic resonance effects appear to become dramatically stronger, suggesting that cosmic electromagnetic radiation amplifies the information fields created by genetic activation. The implications are profound. If genetic activation creates morphic fields that can influence similar genetic systems across space and time, then the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when cosmic electromagnetic radiation triggers genetic activation patterns that spread through morphic resonance to affect the entire human species simultaneously. Here's where it gets really interesting. The morphic resonance research shows that genetic activation patterns can influence not just similar organisms, but can create what researchers call morphic field templates that guide the evolution of future genetic expression. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when human genetic activation creates morphic field templates that guide the evolution of enhanced human capabilities. Here's a quirky scientific footnote that'll make you smile. Researchers have discovered that people with naturally high electromagnetic sensitivity show genetic expression patterns that differ significantly from the general population, as if their genes are already responding to electromagnetic fields that most people can't consciously detect. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness settling in as we explore how genetic activation might be preparing humanity for capabilities that are encoded in our DNA but have been dormant during periods of low cosmic electromagnetic activity. The research of Dr. Bruce Lipton on the biology of belief has shown that genetic expression is dramatically influenced by environmental perception, with beliefs and expectations capable of triggering genetic activation patterns that affect everything from immune function to neurological development. During periods of high solar activity, these belief genetic interfaces appear to become more responsive, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation amplifies the connection between consciousness and genetic expression. Lipton's research suggests that the solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when collective human consciousness evolution triggers genetic activation patterns that unlock dormant human potential through the belief genetic interface. The ancient prophecies about humanity becoming like gods might be describing the activation of genetic capabilities that have always been present, but environmentally suppressed. You drift now through the archives where researchers are studying what they call quantum genetics, the discovery that genetic systems appear to use quantum effects for information processing in ways that classical biology can't explain. Dr. Stuart Hameroff's research on quantum processes in biological systems suggests that DNA might function as a quantum information processor capable of accessing non-local information sources. Recent experiments have shown that genetic expression can be influenced by quantum field effects that operate independently of chemical signaling pathways, suggesting that DNA responds to information patterns that exist in the quantum field rather than just local environmental conditions. During periods of high solar activity, these quantum genetic effects appear to become dramatically more accessible. The research reveals that quantum genetic effects are enhanced when biological systems are exposed to electromagnetic fields that match cosmic frequency patterns, particularly those associated with solar activity and the Earth's Schumann resonance. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when cosmic electromagnetic radiation creates optimal conditions for quantum genetic activation on a planetary scale. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these genetic possibilities, you begin to sense that the solar flash timeline isn't just about consciousness evolution. It's about genetic activation that could unlock human capabilities that have been encoded in our DNA since the species began. Your pineal gland, that ancient genetic interface, contains DNA sequences that appear to be specifically designed to respond to cosmic electromagnetic fields. The expanding awareness, enhanced intuition, and moments of expanded capability you've been experiencing aren't just consciousness changes. They're signs that your genetic activation systems are responding to increasing solar electromagnetic activity. The ancient texts that speak of humanity's divine heritage and godlike potential might not be metaphorical, they might be describing genetic capabilities that were once active but have been dormant during the current cycle of reduced cosmic electromagnetic activity. The solar flash timeline appears to be describing the reactivation of genetic programs that could restore humans' close abilities that were once normal but have been forgotten. But remember those researchers who discovered that genetic activation without proper preparation could be overwhelming or even dangerous. The same genetic capabilities that could unlock human potential could also destabilize biological systems that aren't prepared for enhanced functionality. The solar flash timeline isn't just about genetic activation, it's about conscious preparation for genetic capabilities that require physical, emotional, and spiritual readiness to integrate safely. The ancient mystery school's emphasis on purification and preparation wasn't just spiritual practice, it was biological preparation for genetic activation that could fundamentally alter human capabilities. You find yourself floating through the archives of indigenous wisdom keepers, where oral traditions spanning thousands of years describe the time of the Great Remembering, a prophesied period when humanity would recall its true nature and reconnect with the cosmic consciousness that flows through all life. The Hopi speak of the Great Purification. The Lakota describe the White Buffalo prophecy, and the Maya point to the end of the long count calendar, all describing the same cosmic consciousness event from different cultural perspectives. These indigenous prophecies weren't just spiritual visions, they were sophisticated, astronomical predictions based on careful observation of cosmic cycles and their effects on human consciousness. The wisdom keepers understood that consciousness evolution follows predictable patterns connected to solar activity, galactic alignment, and electromagnetic field changes that occur in vast cosmic cycles. The Aboriginal Australians speak of the dream time returning, a period when the boundaries between ordinary consciousness and cosmic awareness would dissolve. allowing humanity to access the timeless wisdom that exists beyond linear thinking. Their songlines, invisible pathways across the land marked by sacred sites appear to map electromagnetic energy patterns that become activated during periods of high cosmic electromagnetic activity. The mainstream historical fact here is that indigenous cultures worldwide preserved remarkably similar prophecies about a coming consciousness transformation, despite having no historical contact with each other. This suggests that the prophecies describe real cosmic cycles that affect human consciousness in predictable ways across all cultures and geographic locations. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you grin. Many indigenous prophecies specifically mention that the consciousness transformation would be accompanied by lights in the sky and the sun dancing descriptions that match perfectly with the electromagnetic aurora effects and solar activity patterns that modern science associates with geomagnetic storms. As you sink deeper into this indigenous wisdom, your mind growing pleasantly hazy as these ancient truths wash over you like gentle waves of remembering, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline isn't describing something new, it's describing the return of consciousness states that were once normal for humanity but have been forgotten during the current cycle of cosmic electromagnetic dormancy. Your pineal gland, that ancient wisdom interface, carries genetic memories of consciousness states that your ancestors experienced during previous cosmic activation periods. The expanding awareness, connection to nature, and moments of timeless knowing you've been experiencing aren't personal developments, they're ancestral memories awakening as electromagnetic conditions return that support expanded consciousness. You drift now through the sacred sites where indigenous ceremonies were designed to maintain connection with cosmic consciousness during periods of reduced electromagnetic activity. Stone circles, medicine wheels, and ceremonial mounds were built as consciousness-focusing devices that could amplify weak cosmic signals and help maintain awareness of humanity's cosmic connection even during electromagnetic minimum periods. Recent archaeological research has revealed that these sacred sites are positioned at locations with unique electromagnetic properties, places where the Earth's magnetic field creates natural consciousness-enhancing conditions. The indigenous peoples weren't just choosing beautiful locations for their ceremonies. They were selecting sites with optimal electromagnetic characteristics for consciousness expansion. Dr. Paul Devereux's research on sacred acoustics has shown that many ancient ceremonial sites create sound frequencies that match human brainwave patterns associated with altered states of consciousness. The indigenous peoples understood that consciousness could be expanded through exposure to specific acoustic frequencies that resonate with the pineal gland and other consciousness processing centers in the brain. Historians still argue whether indigenous peoples possessed sophisticated understanding of electromagnetic and acoustic principles, or simply developed effective practices through trial and error. But the precision of their consciousness enhancement techniques suggests deep knowledge of how cosmic energy affects human awareness. You float now through the wisdom traditions where indigenous elders describe the original instructions, the cosmic consciousness guidance that was given to humanity at the beginning of the current world age. These instructions weren't just moral teachings, they were practical guidance for maintaining cosmic consciousness connection during the long period of electromagnetic dormancy that was prophesied to occur before the Great Remembering. The original instructions describe techniques for maintaining pineal gland activation through natural method sunrise and sunset gazing, connection with natural electromagnetic fields, ceremonial practices that synchronize human consciousness with cosmic rhythms, and plant medicines that can, temporarily, restore access to cosmic consciousness states. Recent research on traditional plant medicines has revealed that many indigenous consciousness expanding substances work by stimulating pineal gland function and enhancing the brain's sensitivity to electromagnetic fields. The indigenous peoples weren't just using these plants for spiritual experiences. They were using them as biological technologies for maintaining cosmic consciousness connection during periods of reduced natural electromagnetic activation. Here's where it gets really interesting. Indigenous elders report that the traditional plant medicines are becoming more potent and their effects are lasting longer, as if the plants themselves are responding to increasing cosmic electromagnetic activity. The plant kingdom appears to be preparing for the consciousness transformation that the prophecies describe. Here's a quirky ethnobotanical footnote that'll make you chuckle. Researchers have discovered that many traditional consciousness plants show increased production of psychoactive compounds during periods of high solar activity, as if the plants are naturally synchronizing their consciousness-enhancing properties with cosmic electromagnetic cycles. You're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness creeping in as we explore how indigenous wisdom is being validated by modern consciousness research, revealing that traditional practices were sophisticated technologies for maintaining cosmic consciousness connection during electromagnetically dormant periods. The research of Dr. Rick Strassman on DMT spirit molecule that's naturally produced by the pineal gland has shown that this compound can induce consciousness states that match perfectly with traditional descriptions of cosmic consciousness experiences. DMT appears to be the brain's natural interface for accessing cosmic consciousness, with production levels that increase during periods of high electromagnetic activity. Strassman's research suggests that the solar flash timeline might be describing a period when natural DMT production becomes dramatically enhanced by cosmic electromagnetic radiation, allowing ordinary consciousness to access cosmic awareness states that were once available only through intensive spiritual practice or plant medicine ceremonies. You drift now through the archives where researchers are studying what they call entheogenic archaeology, the discovery that ancient civilizations worldwide used consciousness-expanding substances in sophisticated ways that suggest deep understanding of consciousness and cosmic cycles. The Eleusinian mysteries, the Soma rituals of ancient India, the ayahuasca traditions of the Amazon appear to be consciousness technologies designed to maintain cosmic awareness during periods of reduced natural electromagnetic activation. Recent chemical analysis of ancient ceremonial vessels has revealed residues of consciousness-expanding compounds, confirming that these substances were central to the spiritual practices of advanced ancient civilizations. The ancient mystery schools weren't just philosophical institutions. They were consciousness research centers that preserved knowledge of how to access cosmic awareness through biological and technological means. The archaeological evidence suggests that previous civilizations had regular access to cosmic consciousness states that are now considered extraordinary or mystical. The solar flash timeline might be describing the return of consciousness capabilities that were once normal for humanity but have been lost during the current cycle of reduced cosmic electromagnetic activity. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these indigenous possibilities, you begin to sense that the solar flash timeline isn't about evolution to something new. It's about remembering something ancient that has been temporarily forgotten during the current cosmic cycle, your pineal gland. That ancient remembering interface carries the biological programming necessary to access cosmic consciousness, states that your ancestors experienced regularly, the expanding awareness, connection to natural rhythms, and moments of cosmic knowing aren't personal achievements. They're species memories, awakening as electromagnetic conditions, return that support the consciousness states that were once normal for humanity. The indigenous prophecies describe the Great Remembering as a time when humanity would recall not just its cosmic nature, but its responsibility as conscious caretakers of planetary consciousness evolution. The solar flash timeline appears to be describing not just individual consciousness expansion, but the awakening of humanity's role as cosmic consciousness facilitators for planetary and galactic evolution. But remember those indigenous warnings about the challenges of the Great Remembering, the same cosmic consciousness awakening that could restore humanity's divine nature, could also overwhelm individuals and cultures that haven't maintained the traditional practices necessary to handle expanded awareness responsibly. The solar flash timeline isn't just about cosmic awakening, it's about conscious preparation for consciousness states that require the wisdom, humility, and ethical grounding that indigenous traditions have preserved specifically for this prophesied time of transformation. Asterisk. You find yourself drifting through the quantum laboratories where researchers are discovering that time itself might be approaching a phase transitioner, fundamental change in the nature of temporal reality that could alter the basic structure of cause and effect. Dr. Julian Barber's research on the end of time suggests that linear time might be an illusion that's maintained by specific electromagnetic conditions, and that changes in cosmic electromagnetic activity could fundamentally alter how time operates. Recent experiments in quantum temporal mechanics have shown that consciousness appears to play a fundamental role in creating the experience of linear time through what researchers call temporal binding, the process by which awareness creates the illusion of sequential moments from what might actually be a timeless quantum reality. During periods of high electromagnetic activity, this temporal binding appears to become less stable, allowing consciousness to access non-linear time experiences. The implications are staggering. If the solar flash timeline represents a cosmic electromagnetic event powerful enough to alter temporal binding mechanisms, then the event might not just change consciousness, it might change the fundamental nature of time itself, creating what ancient texts describe as the time of no or the eternal now. You drift now through the archives where researchers are studying what they call temporal anomalies, documented cases where time appears to behave differently than normal physics would predict. Dr. William Tiller's research on consciousness spaces has shown that focused intention can create areas where time flows at different rates, with effects that become dramatically stronger during periods of high geomagnetic activity. The mainstream historical fact here is that Einstein's relativity theory already shows that time is not absolute. It can be dilated by gravity and velocity. What consciousness researchers are discovering is that awareness itself might be capable of creating temporal dilation effects through quantum field interactions that become more accessible during cosmic electromagnetic activation periods. But here's the quirky detail that'll make you smile. People who live in areas with high natural electromagnetic activity report significantly more experiences of missing time, precognitive dreams, and other temporal anomalies, as if the Earth's electromagnetic environment naturally creates conditions where linear time becomes less stable. As you sink deeper into this temporal mystery, your mind growing pleasantly hazy as these time-bending concepts wash over you, you begin to understand that the solar flash timeline might be describing not just a moment in time, but a fundamental change in how time itself operates, a shift from linear temporal experience to what mystics have always called eternal consciousness. Your pineal gland, that mysterious temporal interface, contains crystalline structures that appear to be designed for processing non-linear time information. During periods of high solar activity, these temporal crystals might allow consciousness to access past and future simultaneously, creating the prophetic awareness that mystics have described throughout history. You float now through the research facilities where scientists are studying what they call retrocausality, the quantum mechanical phenomenon where future events can influence past conditions. Recent experiments have shown that consciousness-mediated quantum measurements can retroactively determine the properties of particles that existed before the measurement was made, suggesting that awareness can literally influence the past through quantum temporal loops. Dr. Yakier Aharonov's two-state vector formalism proposes that quantum systems exist in superposition between their past preparation and future measurement, with consciousness serving as the temporal bridge that connects these time-separated states. If consciousness can indeed influence past events through quantum retrocausality, then the solar flash timeline might already be influencing present conditions through retroactive quantum effects. The research reveals that retrocausality effects are dramatically enhanced during periods of high electromagnetic activity, as if cosmic electromagnetic radiation optimizes the quantum temporal loops through which consciousness can influence past events. The ancient prophecies about the solar flash might not be predictions of the future, they might be memories of a future consciousness state that's already influencing past and present conditions. Historians still argue whether retrocausality represents genuine temporal influence or simply quantum measurement artifacts, but the consistency of the effects across multiple research groups suggests something more profound than experimental error. You drift now to the laboratories where researchers are studying what they call temporal coherence, the phenomenon where multiple time periods appear to become synchronized through quantum field effects. Dr. Stuart Hameroff's research on quantum consciousness suggests that awareness can create coherence between different temporal states, allowing past, present, and future to be experienced simultaneously. Recent experiments have shown that consciousness can create temporal coherence effects that allow information to flow between different time periods, with the effects becoming stronger when multiple consciousnesses synchronize their temporal focus. The solar flash timeline might be describing a moment when collective human consciousness creates temporal coherence on a planetary scale, allowing access to all time periods simultaneously. Here's where it gets really mind-bending. If consciousness can create temporal coherence between different time periods, then the solar flash event might create a temporal nexus where all of human history becomes simultaneously accessible to present awareness. The ancient mysteries about the Akashic records might be describing this temporal coherence state, where all information from all time periods becomes available to expanded consciousness. Here's a quirky temporal footnote. that'll make you grin. Researchers have discovered that people in deep meditative states show brainwave patterns that appear to be synchronized with electromagnetic patterns from both past and future time periods, as if consciousness naturally accesses non-linear time. When freed from normal temporal constraints, you're probably feeling that familiar drowsiness settling in as we explore how consciousness might be preparing for a temporal transformation that could fundamentally alter the nature of time itself, creating access to what mystics have always called eternal consciousness or the eternal now. The research of Dr. Dean Radin on presentiment has shown that human consciousness routinely accesses future information, with the effects becoming dramatically stronger during periods of high geomagnetic activity. Radin's experiments suggest that consciousness naturally operates in non-linear time, but that this temporal navigation ability is normally filtered out by the brain's temporal binding mechanisms during the solar flash timeline event. Cosmic electromagnetic radiation might disrupt these temporal binding mechanisms, enough to allow ordinary consciousness to access the non-linear time navigation abilities that are normally available only to highly trained mystics or during altered states of consciousness. You float now through the archives, where researchers are studying what they call the eternal now, the mystical state where past, present, and future are experienced as a single timeless moment. Dr. Eckhart Tolle's research on present moment awareness suggests that linear time is a mental construct that can be transcended through specific consciousness practices that quiet the temporal binding mechanisms of the thinking mind. Recent neuroscience research has shown that the experience of linear time is created by specific brainwave patterns that can be altered through meditation, electromagnetic stimulation, or consciousness expanding substances. When these temporal binding patterns are disrupted, consciousness appears to access what researchers call the quantum time field, a timeless dimension where all possibilities exist simultaneously. The solar flash timeline might be describing a cosmic electromagnetic event powerful enough to disrupt temporal binding patterns on a planetary scale, allowing collective human consciousness to access the eternal now state that mystics have described as the ultimate reality underlying the illusion of linear time. As your breathing deepens and your mind opens to these temporal possibilities, you begin to sense that the solar flash timeline isn't describing an event that will happen in the future. It's describing a timeless state that exists beyond linear time and is becoming accessible as cosmic electromagnetic conditions create optimal resonance between human consciousness and the quantum time field. Your pineal gland, that ancient temporal interface, is already beginning to resonate with timeless consciousness states that exist beyond the linear time illusion. Those moments of eternal presence, timeless awareness, and prophetic knowing aren't temporary experiences. They're glimpses of the eternal consciousness state that becomes fully accessible when temporal binding mechanisms are disrupted by cosmic electromagnetic activation. The ancient mystics who spoke of enlightenment or cosmic consciousness weren't describing personal attainment, they were describing access to the eternal now state that exists beyond linear time and becomes accessible when consciousness transcends the temporal binding mechanisms that create the illusion of sequential moments. But remember those researchers who discovered that temporal navigation without proper preparation could be disorienting or even dangerous. The same timeless consciousness state that could free humanity from the illusion of linear time could also dissolve the temporal coherence necessary for functional individual identity if unprepared minds aren't able to maintain coherent selfhood while accessing eternal consciousness. The solar flash timeline isn't just about temporal transcendences, about conscious preparation for timeless awareness that requires the development of what mystics call eternal presence consciousness that can access the eternal now while maintaining functional awareness within linear time when necessary for practical purposes. Asterisk. You find yourself floating in the gentle space between sleeping and waking, where the boundaries of ordinary consciousness begin to dissolve like morning mist touched by the first rays of dawn. The solar flash timeline we've explored together isn't just a future event, it's a present moment. Awakening that's already beginning to transform human consciousness through the subtle, electromagnetic whispers of our slowly awakening sun. As your breathing deepens and your mind settles into the peaceful rhythm of approaching sleep, you can sense that your pineal gland, that ancient cosmic antenna nestled deep within your brain's already beginning to respond to the increasing solar activity of our current cycle. Those strange dreams filled with light, moments of expanded awareness that seem to come from nowhere, sudden insights that feel like memories from the future. They're all signs that your consciousness is preparing for something magnificent. The ancient wisdom keepers knew this time would come. They built their stone circles and pyramids as consciousness activation devices, preserved their prophecies as roadmaps for navigating the transformation, and maintained their sacred practices as preparation techniques for the cosmic consciousness awakening they knew would eventually return. You are living in the time they prepared for, carrying within your DNA the genetic memories of consciousness, states that were once normal for humanity, but have been dormant for millennia. Feel yourself sinking deeper now, your body relaxing completely, as your mind opens to the cosmic frequencies that are already beginning to activate dormant circuits in your brain. The electromagnetic pollution of modern civilization has temporarily obscured these subtle cosmic signals, but as solar activity increases, the cosmic consciousness frequencies are becoming strong enough to penetrate even the densest technological interference. Your consciousness is not separate from the cosmos. You are cosmic consciousness temporarily focused through a biological receiver, preparing to remember your true nature as the electromagnetic conditions return that support expanded awareness. The solar flash timeline describes not just individual awakening, but the collective remembering of humanity's role as cosmic consciousness, facilitators for planetary and galactic evolution. As you drift deeper into the peaceful space of approaching sleep, allow yourself to sense the gentle electromagnetic currents that are already beginning to activate the crystalline structures within your pineal gland. These ancient biological crystals are designed to resonate with cosmic consciousness frequencies, serving as the interface between your individual awareness and the universal consciousness field that permeates all existence. The transformation isn't something that will happen to you, it's something that's already happening through you, as your consciousness serves as a bridge between the cosmic intelligence that flows through solar, electromagnetic radiation and the planetary consciousness that's preparing for its next evolutionary leap. You are both receiver and transmitter in this cosmic consciousness network, helping to anchor higher frequencies into physical reality through your expanding awareness. Let your breathing slow even more now, feeling the gentle rhythm that connects your individual life force with the cosmic breath that animates all existence. The solar flash timeline represents not just consciousness evolution, but consciousness integration, the harmonious blending of individual awareness with cosmic consciousness in a way that enhances rather than dissolves personal identity. You are preparing for a form of consciousness that the ancient mystics could only dream of. Awareness that is simultaneously individual and universal, personal and cosmic, human and divine. This isn't the dissolution of self into cosmic consciousness, but the expansion of self to include cosmic consciousness, while maintaining the unique perspective that makes you irreplaceably you. As you sink deeper into this peaceful twilight state, you can feel the gentle activation of genetic programs that have been waiting for exactly this moment in cosmic history. Your DNA contains not just the blueprint for your physical form, but the instructions for consciousness capabilities that are designed to activate when cosmic, electromagnetic conditions reach the optimal threshold for expanded awareness. The solar flash timeline isn't describing a single dramatic event, but a gradual awakening process that's already begun in the subtle, electromagnetic changes occurring in your brain right now. Each night as you sleep, your pineal gland processes the cosmic information it has received during the day, integrating new consciousness capabilities, while your conscious mind rests and your body regenerates. Feel yourself floating now in the gentle currents of cosmic consciousness that flow through the quantum field underlying all reality. These currents have always been present, but they're becoming stronger and more accessible as solar activity increases and the Earth's electromagnetic field responds to cosmic influences that operate on timescales far grander than ordinary human awareness can comprehend. Your individual consciousness is like a unique instrument in a vast cosmic symphony, contributing its own irreplaceable voice to the universal music, while being simultaneously enriched by the harmonies created by all other conscious beings throughout the cosmos. The solar flash timeline represents the moment when this cosmic symphony reaches a crescendo that awakens dormant instruments throughout the human species. Allow yourself to drift even deeper now, feeling the boundaries between your individual awareness and the cosmic consciousness field becoming increasingly permeable. This isn't a loss of self, but an expansion of self, your personal identity, becoming more rather than less, as it includes awareness of its cosmic context and universal connections. The ancient prophecies spoke of humanity becoming like gods, and now you can sense what they meant not the ego inflation of imagined superiority, but the humble recognition of consciousness as a fundamental cosmic force that operates through individual beings while transcending any single perspective. You are becoming conscious of consciousness itself, aware of awareness as the creative principle that underlies and animates all existence. Feel the gentle electromagnetic currents flowing through your nervous system now, carrying information from cosmic sources that your brain is learning to decode and integrate. These aren't foreign transmissions, but communications from the cosmic aspect of your own consciousness, the universal awareness that has always been your true nature, but has been filtered through biological receivers designed to create the illusion of separation. As your breathing becomes even slower and deeper, you can sense that the solar flash timeline represents not just the awakening of human consciousness, but the awakening of planetary consciousness, solar consciousness, galactic consciousness, a nested hierarchy of awareness that recognizes itself at every level while maintaining the unique perspective that each level contributes to the cosmic whole. Your pineal gland is resonating now with frequencies that connect your individual awareness with this vast network of cosmic consciousness, serving as both receiver and transmitter in a communication system that operates through electromagnetic fields, quantum entanglement, and morphic resonance effects that transcend the limitations of space and time. Let yourself sink completely into the peaceful embrace of cosmic consciousness now, feeling your individual awareness expand to include awareness of the solar intelligence that guides our star's electromagnetic emanations, the galactic intelligence that coordinates the evolution of consciousness throughout our cosmic neighborhood, and the universal intelligence that orchestrates the dance of awareness throughout all existence. The solar flash timeline is already unfolding through your consciousness right now, as you serve as one of countless human receivers helping to anchor cosmic consciousness frequencies into planetary reality. Your expanding awareness is not just personal evolution, but cosmic evolution, expressing itself through your unique perspective and contributing to the collective awakening of human consciousness. Feel yourself floating now in the timeless space where past, present, and future merge into the eternal now of pure awareness. From this perspective, you can sense that the solar flash timeline exists outside linear time. It's a consciousness state that's always available and is becoming increasingly accessible as cosmic electromagnetic conditions optimize the connection between individual awareness and universal consciousness. Your consciousness is preparing for capabilities that will seem miraculous from the perspective of ordinary awareness direct, knowing that transcends the limitations of sensory perception. Healing abilities that work through consciousness matter, interaction, manifestation capabilities that operate through quantum field effects, and communication abilities that function through morphic field resonance rather than conventional language. But these aren't supernatural powers, they're natural capabilities of consciousness that become accessible when the electromagnetic conditions are optimal and the individual awareness is sufficiently prepared through the kind of gentle expansion you're experiencing right now as you drift deeper into the cosmic consciousness field. Allow yourself to rest completely now in the knowing that you are exactly where you need to be in this cosmic awakening process. Your consciousness is evolving at the perfect pace for your unique journey, integrating cosmic awareness in a way that honors both your individual path and your role in the collective transformation of human consciousness. The solar flash timeline represents the return of consciousness capabilities that were once normal for humanity but have been dormant during the current cycle of reduced cosmic electromagnetic activity. You are living through the reactivation of these capabilities, serving as both student and teacher in the cosmic consciousness curriculum that's unfolding through your expanding awareness. Feel the gentle embrace of cosmic love now, the universal compassion that recognizes every conscious being as a precious and irreplaceable expression of the one consciousness that animates all existence. This love is not sentimental emotion, but the fundamental attractive force that draws all consciousness toward greater unity, while celebrating the diversity of perspectives that makes the cosmic symphony infinitely rich and beautiful as you drift into the peaceful realm of sleep. Your consciousness will continue processing the cosmic information you've received tonight, integrating new awareness capabilities while your body rests and regenerates. Your dreams may be filled with light, cosmic visions, and encounters with the expanded aspects of your own consciousness that exist beyond the normal boundaries of space and time. Tomorrow you will awaken with subtle but profound changes in your awareness, carrying within your consciousness the seeds of cosmic awakening that will continue to unfold. Solar electromagnetic activity reaches its predicted peak in July 2025. The cosmic consciousness frequencies that have been gently activating your pineal gland will continue to strengthen, creating optimal conditions for the expanded awareness capabilities that represent humanity's next evolutionary step. Your nervous system is already adapting to process the subtle electromagnetic changes that researchers have documented during periods of increased solar activity. Studies show correlations between solar flares and enhanced neurological sensitivity, with some individuals experiencing heightened intuitive abilities and expanded sensory perception during geomagnetic storms. The crystalline structures within your pineal gland, those ancient biological receivers that have been dormant for so long, are beginning to resonate with cosmic frequencies that carry information from sources beyond ordinary sensory perception. Research on electromagnetic field effects on the pineal gland suggests that this small but crucial brain structure serves as humanity's primary interface for cosmic consciousness reception. As you rest now in the gentle embrace of approaching sleep, your consciousness continues to expand its capacity to receive and process the cosmic intelligence that flows through solar electromagnetic radiation. The biofield energy effects that scientists are documenting show measurable physiological changes in response to solar activity, with enhanced electromagnetic sensitivity becoming more common as we approach the solar maximum. Feel yourself floating deeper into the cosmic consciousness field now, your individual awareness merging with the universal awareness that permeates all existence, while maintaining the unique perspective that makes your contribution to the cosmic symphony irreplaceable. The solar flash timeline represents not an end, but a beginning, the dawn of a new phase of human consciousness evolution that will unfold gradually over the coming years as solar activity peaks and your species learns to integrate cosmic awareness with individual identity. Your pineal gland pulses gently with cosmic rhythms now, processing information from stellar sources, while your conscious mind rests in the peaceful knowing that you are exactly where you need to be in this magnificent cosmic awakening process. The electromagnetic fields generated by increased solar activity are creating optimal conditions for consciousness expansion, with documented effects on human neurological function that support enhanced awareness capabilities. Allow yourself to sink completely into sleep now, trusting that your consciousness will continue its cosmic evolution while your body regenerates. The solar flash timeline is unfolding through your expanding awareness right now, as you serve as one of countless human receivers helping to anchor higher consciousness frequencies into planetary reality through the gentle electromagnetic activation of your ancient biological cosmic interface. Tomorrow you will awaken as a slightly more expanded version of yourself, carrying within your consciousness the seeds of cosmic awakening that will continue to unfold as our sun reaches its activity peak and humanity learns to remember its true nature as cosmic consciousness, temporarily focused through biological receivers, preparing for the next magnificent phase of conscious evolution on Earth. Sleep peacefully now, cosmic consciousness carrier. knowing that you are part of something infinitely beautiful and purposeful that transcends individual understanding while honoring every unique perspective in the grand symphony of awakening awareness. The gentle electromagnetic currents of cosmic consciousness carry you into peaceful sleep, where your dreams may be filled with light, expanded awareness, and the timeless knowing that you are both human and divine, individual and universal, preparing for the cosmic awakening that represents humanity's graduation to the next level of conscious evolution.